Title card, Up Next Ames City Council. The Mayor, City Council and the City Manager sit at a curved dais.
Well, good evening. Call the regular meeting for the Ames City Council for Tuesday, May 26th to order. Welcome, everybody. We're going to start out with a couple of proclamations, and then we'll get into the business.
I can't hear you.
I'll start all over. I have to eat this stupid thing.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'll start over. Oh, there you go. Sorry. I call the regular meeting of the Ames City Council for Tuesday, May 26th to order. We're going to start with some proclamations, then we'll get on with the business. So we'll start with our proclamation for Poppy Days.
The Mayor walks to the podium to read proclamations.
Nobody's there.
Jody, are you here? Jody, man? Well, I'll read it anyway. Poppy Days. Whereas the month of May is a time for remembering, and whereas the American Legion Auxiliary traditionally distributes poppies for aid to disabled veterans during that month, and whereas distribution of these poppies is handled entirely by volunteer workers serving without pay, and where every penny received from the program goes directly for aid to disabled veterans or members of their families, and whereas most of the poppy funds remain in the local community, and whereas the local American Legion Auxiliary number 37 has the responsibility for making Poppy Days a success. Therefore, I, John A. Haleb, Mayor of the City of Ames, Iowa, do hereby proclaim May 24th, 25th as Poppy Days. This is a time when all residents have had opportunities by their donations to honor those who give the ultimate sacrifice and assist the living. And we'll make sure that she gets a copy of the proclamation. And next is Kiwanis Action Club Day. Erica?
Member of the Kiwanis Action Club uses wheelchair to join the Mayor at the podium.
Whereas the Kiwanis Action Club is celebrating its 20th anniversary this year, and whereas over the last 20 years, this Kiwanis Club has given adults with special abilities fellowship and leadership opportunities, and whereas the Action Club members support the Ames community through semi-annual food drives, helping with other Kiwanis clubs with their activities, such as pancake days and community projects such as Rummage Rampage. And whereas the Action Club sponsors a Miracle League sports team, affording those with special needs an opportunity to participate in exciting sports team activities and competitions. Therefore, I, John A. Haleb, Mayor of the City of Ames, Iowa, do hereby proclaim June 2nd, 2026 as Kiwanis Action Club Day, and do hereby congratulate the Action Club on its 20th anniversary. I encourage all residents to join me in celebrating and supporting the invaluable work of the Action Club and all those who contribute to its success. Eric, do you want to say anything or not?
No.
Okay, all right, very good. We'll keep it short. All right.
The Mayor and Kiwanis Action Club member pose for a picture. The Mayor returns to the dais.
All right, we'll move into consent agenda. It's my understanding there's a few items that council wishes to pull. Brown one, item 7G, Tim 9 and 10. Staff has asked I pull item number 35 just for some clarification. Is there anything else that council wants to pull tonight? All right, entertain a motion approving consent.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Junk.
Aye.
Corriere.
Aye.
Rollins. Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Garten.
Hi.
Thank you. All right, Brown, item 7G.
Item 7G, I need to abstain.
Due to conflict of interest.
Yes.
Thank you. Sir,
Approval? Second.
thank you. Roll call.
Corriere.
Aye.
Rollins. Beatty Hansen.
Abstain, conflict.
Garten.
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Thank you. Tim, number 9 and 10.
Yeah, these are great projects, and I love to give a little airtime to them. Not a long time, but I don't know, Brian, if you could speak to this just to introduce what they are and what we're hoping to accomplish.
Assistant City Manager Brian Phillips approaches the staff table.
Sure, I'll do my best. Evening, Mayor and Council. Items 9 and 10 are related. They deal with the subject of parklets in the downtown area. If you recall, last year, the City Council received the downtown guiding vision document. And a part of the strategies that were identified in that document included the notion of better utilizing the public spaces in the downtown area. So a group with the leadership of Ames Main Street convened to determine how parklets might be used to enhance the outdoor dining experience in downtown. There are 2 parklets that are proposed. One would be at Della Vidi, and the other would be at Sam's Place, further down Main Street. The way these parklets would function is that they are structures that have been designed by a local architectural firm. The parklets would take up the space of 2 parking spaces, and they function as an extension of the sidewalk. So we apply the same kinds of concepts that we would for a sidewalk cafe into the parklet space. Both of these establishments would essentially be obtaining a sidewalk cafe in their parklet space, and both would intend to receive approval for the extension of their alcoholic beverage service license, their outdoor service privilege, to be able to serve patrons in those spaces. This all would have to comply with our sidewalk dining ordinance, which establishes set hours for the use of the outdoor dining areas, including the parklets, and it establishes a season for it, so April 1st through October 31st. So the parklets are intended to be temporary. They will be removed at the conclusion of the season and stored. It's my understanding that they are designed to be utilized for a number of years. And we have, as city staff, evaluated them from the standpoint of really 3 issues primarily. One is to ensure that that the parklets don't present a concern with regard to the adjacent traffic, because they are going to be next to an active roadway. So we've ensured that they are suitably set back from the traveled portions of the lanes to avoid any conflicts there. The second is to evaluate it from the standpoint of the building code and ensure that they're structurally sound so they don't fall apart. And then the third is to evaluate and ensure that stormwater flowage isn't impeded. And so the parklets are going to be designed in a way where they have an open grading adjacent to the curb that allows for a flush connection to the curb and to move onto the parklet, but then that grading can be removed, so any obstructions can be removed, and we can ensure that there's stormwater flowage into the stormwater system. At the budget preparation process for this last February, the council had some discussion about funding for a pilot program for parklets. And so that is the gist of item 9, which is a request for $10,000 to be split amongst those 2 parklets to cover or offset some of the costs of materials. The parklets themselves, since they will be occupying parking spaces that are metered, there would be some reimbursement that's required for the lost parking meter revenue to make the parking system whole. So I hope that provides sufficient explanation.
That was amazing.
Oh, great.
So well done. And I just think this is a great opportunity to do something novel. If people have traveled in other communities that have these, they're just a super enhancement to the downtown experience. So hopefully these are well received and we'll be able to add more of them. So thanks for that report. And I would move approval of 9 and 10.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Thank you, Brian.
Rollins. Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Corriere.
Aye.
All right. Item number 35. Keith, I see you're queued up, ready to go. The agenda stipulates accepting the completion of the contract. There's also a change order that's actually listed in the council action form. You want to just clarify that, please?
Keith Abraham, Parks and Recreation Director, approaches the staff table.
Yeah, so there's just two components. One, completion of the project. When the initial contract was awarded to Caliber, with the two change orders, it came out to about $159,000 or $1,159,000. The final, and that was based on estimates. Actuals came out to about $1,114,000. So the balance change order is for a negative $45,000. So those are the two components: the change order, balance change order, along with completion of the project.
And that is, just to be clear, that was in the council packet. It was in the council action form. So I'd entertain a motion on alternative number 1.
Move approval. Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Beatty Hansen,
Aye.
Garten,
Aye.
Junk,
Aye.
Corriere,
Aye.
Rollins.
Thank you, Keith. All right, move on to item up to public forum. This is time we set aside for comments from the public on topics of city business other than those listed on the agenda. Ask people to limit their comments to 3 minutes or less. Is there anyone who wants to address council tonight under public forum? If you please come to the podium, state your name, and you may begin.
John Emery approaches the podium to address council.
My name is John Emery. I live at 5422 Cervantes Drive. Okay, first question I have is, when is the splash pad at Daly Park supposed to open? It says June 1st, and there's not been any work on it for a couple months that I can see.
Okay.
And then the other thing I'm asking for is a no parking zone from
John Emery hands the council a printed picture.
Frost is the first street off of Lincoln Way on Wilder going north. And I brought a picture from Google Maps, which is not very good. If somebody is parked in that first half of Wilder on that second block, you have to swerve into oncoming traffic. All you need is a bucket of paint and have that extended. You can see on the picture that there's a car there, but it's not parked. But you don't have a good view and access if somebody's parked there.
Well, John, it'd be helpful if you could send an email to council and just establish exactly where you're requesting it, and then council can if you send us an email.
Okay.
And specifically identify where on Wilder you're talking about, from what street to what street, council can then consider that under a disposition of communication.
Schubert, that's the street, that first street.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Dylan Klein approaches the podium to address council.
Good evening, Council. Dylan Klein with the Ames Alliance, 304 Main Street. I wanted to extend our conversation about the parklets here just a few more moments to say, one, thank you for your support of this, but I also want to say thank you to the volunteers that are helping bring this to reality. First, ABC Supply has agreed to donate a significant number of materials that would that upgrade the durability and aesthetic of these parklets. So would like to say thank you to their generosity. Iowa Home Crafters has helped or offered to help not only provide their staff to construct these, but also to coordinate with the Ames Home Builders Association for volunteers to build these. That will be on May 30th, that those will be constructed, taking a staff day for Iowa Home Crafters and coordinating of volunteers from the Home Builders Association, and then the donation of time and design services from Tenfold Architecture to design these parklets to fit in an angled parking spot to make the most utilization of the space that's there for folks to enjoy the outdoors. And then to the thank you to all the volunteers on the Downtown Guiding Vision Implementation Task Force that have helped make this first item from that plan a reality. So thank you for your time and for all of the volunteers and donations from everyone.
Thanks, Dylan. Anybody else? All right, we'll close public forum. We'll move on to item 36, presentation from Ames Regional Economic Alliance annual report. Dan?
Dan Culhane approaches the staff table.
Well, good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. I'm going to sit here tonight because I've got an extensive and exhaustive presentation. I'm really not kidding, but these good folks behind me probably didn't come to hear me tonight. So I'm going to move this along a bit, in part because I think our work is well documented through a variety of communications with two members of the City Council on my board of directors, as well as Steve Shanker on our executive committee. So if there's three things you remember from my presentation tonight, it'd be these three things. We need more people. We need to grow. We need more houses. We need more daycare. And woven in this presentation are things that address all those items. And each of you as council members and elected officials in our community have had a role in helping some of that come to fruition this past year, but we need more. So let's get to work here quick. You all know the things we do. This is the secret sauce. We've got a team of 20 people, and we have 20 people in large part because we're a 4-county regional organization. At one time, we stopped at the corporate limits of Ames, and today we stand at 4 counties, and we've got 20 people, and the resources and the funding from those contracts across the region is what enables us to be the organization of 20 folks that we are. Those are the organizations that, it's kind of hard to see on the bottom there, but those are the organizations we represent. And tonight I'm here to talk about Ames, primarily economic development, but I would tell you it's Ames economic and community development because it's interwoven through all the work we do. You'll see a Greene County event there in the last year, but you'll see the area podcast, which is another tool we use to communicate our message about the good things going on in our marketplace. It's not about the Alliance. It's about the good things going on across the region, and in particular, the Ames community. But you'll also see the Live, Work, Play campaign there in the bottom left. I can talk more about that as well. We track a lot of numbers. We track external funding from a variety of projects related to funding. We'll talk a bit about the $500,000 planning grant the city recently received. Congratulations on that. That's a big step for downtown Ames. At the same time, we track capital investment in industries located in the region, and we're really proud and bullish on business retention and expansion visits. This is a statistic from earlier this year at 73 visits. We target about 150 interstate commerce companies across the region. A vast majority, not all, but a vast majority of those are in Ames, and that's where most of our economic development activity traditionally will come from, like it does across the country and the rest of the world. A lot of projects come out of the people that are already here. And so while it's fun to chase that new opportunity that comes to your community and builds a new facility, we like those too, but we have to focus on the people that are already here, the 3Ms, the Danfosses, the Barillas. The list goes on of companies that we're constantly talking to, both at the local level and at the corporate level, about how we can make this place more attractive for them to continue to invest and create meaningful employment opportunities. We still do a lot of marketing. You'll see Dylan in a picture there at Select USA a few weeks ago. We do a lot of trade shows. We do a lot of call trips on behalf of the market, on behalf of the infrastructure we've got here in Ames and the research park and things across the region. But make no question about it, the Prairieview Industrial Center corridor that you've invested in, as well as the research park, which you've also invested in, is a big piece of that. You know, these aren't primary targets for us, but when these things come to bear, oftentimes we've had a hand in those. So Furniture Mart, you did a good job of helping us put that together, but Dylan Klein was actively involved in that. And then the workforce housing tax credits that were in your consent agenda tonight for Harrison Court, for City Light development in downtown Ames. Those things are critically important. And I don't know why it's cut off so bad, but it's cut off a lot. My apologies. Biomaid broke ground last fall on the western side of far western rural Ames, the Danfoss Child Care Facility, which is a project we had a big hand in as related to some ARPA dollars that came through the governor's office to build a very large daycare center that I believe is opening June 1st. And then you can't miss the JT Logistics Facility. It's 300,000 square feet sitting on East 13th Street and is a great accelerant, we believe, for more development on 13th Street. You can't talk about economic development without talking about Olive Garden. And again, This wasn't a primary target for us. I think the community wanted it to be a primary target for us. Nonetheless, Dylan in particular was working on that for quite some time, actually for several years. It finally came to fruition, and I think they're opening later this week. So we can all rest easy. Soup, salad, and breadsticks has come to Ames. Moving along here, there's a lot of things under construction. Some things we've had a hand in, others we haven't. The two quick stars in Ames, we've been involved with those. Chipotle in West Ames. The Bluffs project is well underway in North Ames. You'll see the Dakota townhomes on the west side, the far west side, and the very bottom is also I really don't know what that is. I looked at it a little while ago.
City Lights. City Light.
Hunziker at Research Park.
The Hunziker development at the Research Park. A number of housing units out there coming together quite nicely, and so we're grateful for that continued investment. There's City Light, the project that you approved workforce housing tax credit applications for this evening. What's cool about that is, Tim, you mentioned the parklets we've seen in other inner city leadership visits. We've seen this kind of housing in downtowns across the number of locations we've gone. This represents really well the type of thing I think we've always been chasing. And so I'm grateful for your support tonight, as well as a few weeks ago, but also to the Jensen family for moving forward with this project. It's a home run. The guiding vision, you've heard a lot about that. We have a big hand in that. We've talked about parklets twice tonight. That's cool. You know, I think anything we can do to make this place look more cool all the time. We're always trying to engage people to consider locating their family here, locating their business here, sending their kid to school here is important too. And the more we can do to enhance our downtown and our other commercial districts across the market, that's important for us to be working on. A couple weeks ago, this launched John McGivern's Main Streets. If you go to YouTube and type in John McGivern in Ames, Iowa, there's a great half-hour program on primarily downtown. Also focuses on Ryman Gardens and Iowa State University campus, and it's a really nice piece on the Ames community. The farmers market, thanks for allowing that to expand another block. We believe we're averaging about 10,000 people every Saturday in downtown Ames. And I would venture that there's a few hundred people that plan to come to downtown Ames every weekend or every Saturday morning. But I think there's a whole lot of those folks that end up downtown primarily for the market, which is an absolute home run. We're so proud that's part of our organization. And I'm so proud of the work of Gene Peterson because it is an absolute community gatherer. And that's what we're trying to do, folks, right? We're all trying to create more community so we give more people a reason to want to be here. The market is one great example. I told Gene a couple weeks ago, I said, you know, if it weren't for ISU football Saturdays and college basketball in this community, you'd be number one. But number three isn't bad for someone who generates traffic for 6 months out of the year on a Saturday morning. Really good stuff. Of course, we were in DC a while back, and this ties into inner city. This ties into planning grants from the United States Department of Transportation. These things matter, and so we're grateful that we get a good representation from across the region, including the city of Ames, when we go out there and we put those priorities in front of our elected delegation, and equally important in front of their staffs. And so that was a few weeks ago. And then you'll see a little bit more on inner city visits. And again, I can expand on all this stuff if you want me to, but a number of you have been on these. They're great opportunities for, I believe, inspiration. Hopefully people come home inspired, but we also come home aspiring to greater things, right? More things we can do to make our community even better. Yes, it's very true. Sometimes we come home from those and we say, well, we're doing this, we're doing this, we're doing this. There's a lot of good things going on here too. We know that, but these are an opportunity to dream about what else we could do to make our market better. I talked about the federal planning grant. Thank you, Mayor Hala, Steve, Kelly Diekman, who's in the audience tonight, and you folks at the council table for supporting this. This is a big first step. We had to get there to get to the next step. So well done. A great shot in the arm for our community. We launched the Live, Work, Play in Ames campaign a year ago. That's gone really well. Again, it's to reinforce that if you take a job here and you can find a house here, there's things to do here too across the region. And so we've had about 250,000. I round up all the time, you know that. 250,000 hits on our website or our Facebook, I guess, for the Live, Work, and Play in Ames campaign. And we continue to push that like crazy, even going so far as a Fairway semi-trailer. I'm a little concerned for my own well-being that when I find that one day on the road, I'm going to lose control of my vehicle trying to grab my camera on my phone to take a picture of it that I saw it. But it's really cool. We're going to continue to do things like that to promote the fact that this is a great place to live and recreate. Athens, Georgia is our next inner city visit. That's coming up in September. That's selling quickly. Again, it's a bigger market, but there's a lot of alignment between the universities, both land-grant universities, and a lot of things going on. I think we're excited. I know we're excited about that and looking forward to that in the latter part of September. And then community impact, you'll see a farm to table dinner there. You'll see a variety of things that we're actively involved in. The bottom center is Ragbri, and Ragbri is amazing and it's wonderful. But if it doesn't come anytime soon, again, that'd be okay because it's a heavy lift. I know the City of Ames certainly understands that. So does my team. It's a lot of work, but it's gratifying to see all those people. That's a shot of downtown Ames. It was pretty cool. We're regional storytellers. In our magazine, it's important to know that our magazine goes to almost every household in Ames, and then it goes across the region to economic development boards and elected officials. If I could afford it, I'd send it to everybody in the 4-county region because it's all about good news, good things, and good people doing cool stuff in our communities. And so we're proud of that publication. I know Eric Smith, who leads that for us and produces that, thinks 4 times a year is enough. I'd like him to do it once a month, and I just can't afford it. And so we're going to continue to do it 4 times a year. With that, I'll land the plane. I'll answer any questions. But again, I want to be respectful of your agenda tonight. And thank you for your ongoing support on behalf of the Board of Directors of the Alliance. We're grateful for the opportunity to work here in the Ames community.
Thank
I'll
you,
stop
Dan.
there.
Thanks, Dan. Questions?
Just a quick question. First of all, just want to thank you and your team for all the success. And I think I speak for everyone when I say we are really proud to have you as a partner in the community. We all know housing is a big deal, and you mentioned daycare, but if you take those 2 pieces away, what's the other piece that's sort of missing when you talk to our current large employers or potential investors in the community?
I think it's choice on a lot of fronts, Amber. I think it's a broader choice of things to do. It's broader food options and more specifically ethnic food options that don't necessarily exist in our market. And so it's certainly things like that, but typically it's still housing. It's still, I get apologies from executives at companies who say, hey, Dan, you need to know I don't live in Ames. And I say, well, as long as you live in one of the communities we work in, I'm okay with that. Well, I live south. And so that's not helpful to me. But we continue to push for more of that. And, you folks have done a lot with housing here in the last few months that I think really starts to set the table for us to go forward with a number of housing subdivisions. But again, we need housing of all types and choices because not everybody's buying a single family home, right? But we also need more options for just pure livability, things to do, different markets and different restaurants and things like that, different public spaces.
Thanks.
Other
Dan,
questions?
Take another beat on that, if you would. I agree with you completely that when the leadership of these different businesses live in our community, I think they have a different perspective on why it's important that those businesses stay here in this community. I'm just going to throw you a softball. Why do you think it's important that we provide those kind of opportunities in terms of connect the dots rather between that and keeping those businesses here in our community?
Well, I think there's around 18,000 people that come into Story County, not just Ames, but it's predominantly Ames, to go to work every day. They come from someplace else. And I always think if even 10% of those people bought a home here and went to church here, or went to the grocery store, or bought a beer here, I think the impact it would have on our local economy, it's significant. And so I think what concerns me when any senior leadership in particular, they make the most money at most of our companies. And so their charitable dollars also go where their kids go to elementary school or high school. And if they go to Ankeny or Waukee or someplace else, our community loses that. And so, yeah, in a perfect world, everybody would live here, right? It's not perfect. But the more people that can live here and choose to live here because they like what they see beyond just the job would be really helpful to all of us, helpful to you for local option sales tax. The more local option sales tax that's generated comes back to your table to spend in our community. And so it's things like that that we think about all the time, is how do we make this a better place, a more inviting place for people of all backgrounds and all types of jobs to say, yeah, I'm going to take that great job in Ames because this community is a job creator, right? I think we all know that. It generates jobs like crazy. And so at the end of the day, how do we get people to take those really good jobs and then stay here too? That's the challenge, not just for the Alliance, but for all of us in this room. We're in this together, right? And we have to work collectively and collaboratively to figure out how to keep more people here. It's also a retention issue. If you're a young person, your first job right out of Iowa State or right out of college somewhere, you come to Ames and you get that job at one of our tech companies, and you say, well, I'm going to live in downtown Des Moines. Over time, it's hard to retain you if you live in downtown Des Moines or somewhere in the metro if the same job exists down there. And so it's a retention issue for a lot of in particular, our tech companies, our software companies, that say we have a hard time getting people to stick because there isn't an inviting enough place for them to be.
Great, thanks for that.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
All right, thanks for the report, Jen. All right, move on to item number 37. Update to proposed solar project. Brian?
Brian Phillips and Donald Comm approach the staff table.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. As you recall, last week, the City Council approved a lease option agreement with a developer for the installation of solar panels at the Ames Municipal Airport. This is an effort that has come together fairly quickly. One of the key deadlines here is the ability of the developer to complete enough work to qualify for federal tax credits in order to make the solar energy from the project more economically viable. And that deadline is looming here as we get into June next month. The deadline is July 3rd of 2026 for them to make some substantial construction efforts towards the project. In the discussions related to the area that would be leased in the agreement, we received direction from the City Council to endeavor to exclude areas that might be developed in the future for other either aeronautical or non-aeronautical uses at the airport. Following the council approving the agreement on Tuesday, the developer has reported that their preliminary engineering analysis has indicated that the areas that we have outlined, which total about 80 developable acres, are not really economically viable for the type of project they would like to pursue. The costs are anticipated to be much higher than what the market rate for that amount of energy would bear. After some conversations with the developer in the latter part of last week, we're bringing this to you to decide what the next step is. The developer has indicated that without more land area included, they are concerned about proceeding because they do have some substantial financial obligations here that would begin as early as this week if they were to proceed. And the concern is that if they proceed and they lay out several $100,000 worth of expenditures and the project is not ultimately viable, then that's wasted effort, certainly. The developer has indicated that they're in the business of providing economical energy. So if the price of the project was such that the City Council believed it would still be worth it to do it, but the developer felt that it was significantly out of line with what the market would bear for a similar project, they would not be interested in pursuing it. As we've had these discussions, the developer has identified that one parcel that would make this project significantly more financially viable is the parcel that's currently occupied by a lease with John Deere. So this is an area on the west side of the airport that totals about 53 acres. The city leases that area to John Deere for the testing of its farm implements. And the area is also identified in the long-range airport master plan as approximately 1/3 future non-aeronautical development and 2/3 future development for airport uses. Namely, it's the location where the T-hangars, which are aging, would ultimately be relocated. And then there's also space in there for future private hangar development as well. So we're at this point where we need some information from the City Council about whether you are interested in continuing the solar project, which would mean committing to the use of that John Deere area for the project, or if this is simply an opportunity for us to say that our interests aren't aligned and we can't make the project work. We have not had direct conversations with John Deere about their interests. We have a lease with John Deere for the use of that property. It's a 10-year lease that we initiated, I think, about 4 years ago. It also has several extensions in it. The lease has a 360-day notice of cancellation, but seeing as all of this discussion came up very late last week, we have not had the opportunity to provide any meaningful notice to John Deere to discuss alternatives, to discuss their interests, their timing, and other ways that we may be able to facilitate their operations at the airport or other city property. That, I think, is the overall background of where we are at the moment.
You did talk to Iowa State, though, right?
Yeah. So we did not have conversations directly with John Deere. We have had conversations with the research park. They've indicated that it would be their preference to allow John Deere to continue at their current location. Certainly, it would be disruptive to move them to an alternative location where it may not be as convenient, or a full 53 acres that's contiguous to one another, where they'd be able to operate. A representative of the solar developer is present tonight. If the council has any questions for the developer, otherwise I'm happy to answer any questions that I can.
Thanks, Brian. Questions for staff?
So I'll start. Brian, first of all, thank you. And to Don, thank you for all the work. There was a lot of work that went into this. And I believe that everyone has acted in good faith, but I'm still fuzzy in terms of how we got here. So certainly as part of the evaluation of the airport property for this solar development, there was consideration about the parcels of land that could accommodate these solar panels. And so I guess that's my question. If there's a lot of people here tonight, people watching, I'm still a little unclear why these issues didn't surface at the beginning and why we are where we are. Could you help me with that?
Well, I think in retrospect, we probably did not come to the city council soon enough to learn what your preference was with regard to areas designated in the master plan for future airport development, whether the council would be supportive of utilizing those areas for a solar development or not. And so early in the discussions with the developer, there was not a discussion about whether that property, that John Deere property, would be made available or not to the developer, and the assumption was made that it would be. So until recently, that property was a part of the developer's projections.
Anything else? Other questions? All right, we'll open up public comment. Is anyone who wants to address council on this topic? The developer is welcome to do that if he wants to. You just
Eric Bergstrom approaches the podium to address council.
Evening,
Good
Mayor
evening.
and Council. My name is Eric Bergstrom. I'm with Recall Strategies and representing the development subsidiary that we own called Ames Greenfield Development Company. So I've been in the energy space since 2008, been part of developing energy projects all over North America, but I've developed from inception through operations projects in Iowa and adjacent states here. We have projects that are actively going into construction yet this year or next year that we've been working on for years in the state. Love doing business in Iowa and continue to do much more in the future. Recall's been in business since 2018. We have been at our core a public affairs firm that also provides development services to the energy industry and to other large infrastructure projects. We have permitted for our clients, and we have more than 43 development clients that we work for across the United States and Canada and throughout North America, more than 600 projects totaling over 55,000 megawatts, which is a tremendous amount of energy across the United States. We are very excited to be here for this opportunity for a potential solar project here on the airport site here in the city of Ames. It's a potential 24.9 megawatt project, which we would expect to go into construction and into operations in 2028. It would represent more than $50 million in total investment, for which it would present a long-term economic hedge as well as renewable energy to serve the city of Ames and Ames, Iowa. As has been discussed, in order for us to proceed, we need to take a safe harbor tax credit mechanism, which looks like we need to initiate the start of construction prior to July 3rd. We have completely scoped this out, and I think going back just a little bit on timing here, it might help to answer some of the questions of how it is that we got here. I'll try to be brief in this, but back in the fall of last year, we as a developer and as an entity signed a letter of intent with the city of Ames in March of 2025 for us to pursue new renewable energy projects that could get delivered to the city of Ames.
could you pull your mic just a little closer to
Yeah, is this better?
Yeah, that's
Okay,
much
sorry
better.
about that. Okay, yeah. So back in March of 2025, we engaged with the city of Ames here and signed a letter of intent to deliver potential new renewable energy projects to the city, with the city being the beneficiary of that. So we would turn on our development arm and we would go and exclusively try to develop some projects that would serve the city. One of those sites that we found that could be suitable in the process of diligencing that with staff and other members of the city was the potential for a project to be located at the Ames airport using excess agricultural land that is out there. Amongst that, what we narrowed in on is land that is in the master plan designated as a 20-plus year use, meaning it is property that for the next 20 years doesn't have a plan for it, but 20 years beyond, you have hangar space. And we are almost always looking at a PPA term or an operational life of a solar project that's going to range in the contracted portion in the 15 to 25 year window. So that's perfectly compliant and highly compliant with the existing master plan from our view. The other land use was non-aeronautical. So that western chunk, the 53 acres there, in order for us to proceed, ultimately, what we've found is that is about 40% of the nameplate of the total airport area. The FAA is a huge hurdle to go through for us on a federal permitting basis for what's going to be out there on site. And we've spent, going back to last fall, an incredible amount of time and a lot of energy trying to designate which areas at the airport are high likelihood for the FAA to approve, which are low likelihood, and which have zero likelihood. And all of the John Deere property ultimately comes out to be high likelihood. It is virtually 100% buildable. It's 40% of the nameplate of the capacity of the project. It is 2/3 of the economic weight of the project, meaning the value you deliver. It is the hub by which all of the other spokes are connected. Ultimately, without that being part of the lease agreement, without that being part of the project, the economic viability of it is such that it is far enough out of market that we cannot proceed at this point in time. And it is not just the $300,000 check that we need to cut tomorrow for this project, and it literally is tomorrow, so it arrives on Thursday. It's the next to call it, double that, right? We'll be into this about 750,000 by this fall. And ultimately, if I'm going to be delivering a project that's out of market, we're not going to proceed. I do not have ownership support or board approval for that kind of action absent this land being part of the project at this point in time. So we very much do want to proceed. We believe that it's compliant with the 20-year plans of how the hangar space is intended to be used and built out in the master plan. We believe it's compliant with a non-aeronautical land use and would be a great use of space. We certainly appreciate the contributions of a John Deere to any community, as would anyone. It's a tremendous partner to have in a community. From my view as a developer of a solar project, I think that there's still hundreds of acres available at the airport that would be highly suitable for the same use, and perhaps a little bit of shuffling would help us. But ultimately, if we don't have that back kind of in there and into the property in the area that we can build on, we don't have a path to proceed past this point. So that's what we're asking for here.
All right, thank you. Anybody else want to address council tonight?
Mary Richards approaches the podium to address council.
Sorry, I hope you're not deducting that from my 2 minutes. Mary Richards, 720 Kellogg. I want to start out by telling you that I am extremely proud of the City of Ames and specifically the City Council for really having adopted a climate action plan and a future of affordable energy for this community. I brag about this when I'm in other places. So I want to start out by having you know that. Now, I would say that I read the staff report on the proposed airport solar project. And my analysis of it is that the staff proposal really is a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. Only I think in this case, what we're talking about is if we look at it in terms of the Iowa game laws, our bird in the hand is a dove, and the potential two in the bush is a couple of wild turkeys. And I say this because I think the potential for reasonable energy in the future is so much worth this development that we're looking at right now. And so I really urge you to take that into consideration when you're making your choice about this. Thanks.
Thank you, Mary.
Leanne Wilson approaches the podium to address council.
Well, I just have one question. It's been keeping me awake this week.
Just state your name and you go ahead.
Oh, Leanne Wilson, 5326 Springbrook Drive, West
Thank you.
Ames. Been here 53 years now. I just have one question, which is, it's been keeping me awake this week, which is, if we can't move forward on this, how long is it going to take us to get solar? Solar is locally sourced. Solar is going to keep our costs down. Solar is reliable and it's needed. It's part of the climate action plan. If we don't do this, and this is a genuine question, what's the backup plan? Where do we put it if we can't put it at the airport? When can we get it done? And I would really like to know the answers to those questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Karen Murphy approaches the podium to address council.
I'm Karen Murphy and I live at 5721 Westfield Drive. I'm here because I feel like I need to walk the walk. I do a lot of talking about solar and sustainability in our environment. I have grandkids and I want a world that is sustainable and will be there for when they get to my age. I'm here because I'm huge on compromise, and I was learning a lot because I didn't realize there was the dilemma, because I got real excited when I heard last week that I thought everything was a go. So after hearing all this, I just feel like that if we're committed to solar, And I agree with her that the longer we go, then we get that much further behind. If there is some way to, keep John Deere, keep the airport as we need it. I mean, obviously there's a lot of land out there that I feel like that maybe that's the thing, but I realize the time element now, we're in a crunch. But I would think that that would be my philosophy if I was sitting in y'all's place is there a way that we can make this work for everybody? Because it is good. Everything that they're doing out there at the airport, I think, is good. So that's all I'm asking is keep that in mind. Is there a way that we can keep going forward and make it happen and make it work for everybody so that no one's getting shut out? Thank you.
Thank you.
Caitlin Leanne approaches the podium to address council.
Caitlin Leanne, Ames resident, also member of the Ames Climate Action Team. I came back today because I had heard that this was on the agenda and I find it of very high importance. So I'm here to show my continued support for the solar project. I understand that there have been some hiccups, but I do not want this to derail our goals that we have put into this community as far as the Ames Climate Action Plan goes. We are actually behind target with those goals. We were supposed to add 50 megawatts of solar and wind by 2025, and we have not met that deadline. If we do not pass this solar project and find a way to do it, there really is no foreseeable tax credits in the horizon with this current administration that will benefit the city and the residents to help subsidize the costs of such a project. And so time is really of the essence. I think we should act now on this. It's kind of a no-brainer. So I think that there's also an ethical obligation that the city council has to its residents over private business. I get John Deere is an Iowa company. I know that we've had a close relationship working with them. However, I would be curious to know if they felt or what their thoughts were if this land were to be used and kept with them versus hindering the development of a solar array. I do think John Deere is a forward-thinking company. They think about the environment. They think about sustainability. I'm sure that there might be some way that we can work with them so that they're still able to meet their objectives. And then we're also able to get our solar array. The concerns that I have is that if this project dies, it's going to look a lot like the city chose private profit over the community and over its residents. Solar is going to benefit our community, including our businesses like John Deere, in the long term. And so I think we need to prioritize it. And I think that is all of my comments. Thank you so much for all the work that you guys have put into this.
Thank you.
Jerry Neal approaches the podium to address council.
Jerry Neal, 916 Ridgewood. As we mentioned in the letter to ACAT last Friday, we support the idea of land use planning. It's an important tool for the city, but we expect it to be dynamic, to be able to respond to, in this case, critical infrastructure risks and subsequent rate cost rises that are being posed by changing climate. We have a climate action plan, we have a vulnerability study, but we seem to be lacking urgency around our plan. So we're here tonight, having not even contacted the major leaseholder, John Deere, and the council wrestling with this significant mound of complex trade-offs and a time-pressed decision. It's disappointing, and it is worrisome. A friend of mine had an interesting analysis having to do with who benefits, and I find it a useful metric, and perhaps you would like it. According to Google AI, a 25 megawatt power supply can support approximately 15 to 25,000 Americans, but because Americans are sharing utilities, they usually do these calculations based on households. So 25 megawatt powers, about 16,500 to 20,500 households, or if they're regular users, and you can get 25 to 30,000 homes if these people are really, into applying their energy in a energy-saving way. So council is being asked to consider retaining airport land for future airport development. How many people benefit or would benefit from air traffic at the Ames Airport? According to Wikipedia, In the year ending September 12th, 2022, the airport had 30,150 aircraft operations. That's an average of 83 per day. 93% is general aviation, 5% is air taxi, and 1% military. It is almost an even trade. Households supplied with less polluting electricity versus airplane flights. However, we also need to consider that, according to Discover Ames, on the website, the Ames Municipal Airport, operated by Central Iowa Air Service, is designed to serve corporate fleets, charters, and small private aircraft. So, households supplied with less polluting electricity versus airplane flights. Which do we value more? With respect to the decision tonight, I'm asking you to support pursuing a solar energy ownership path for the city over relying solely on power purchase from the regional market. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, we'll close public comment. Council?
I'd like to follow up on a question that Leanne had. I know the timeline was rushed, but was there any consideration to like other city land or other sites that could accommodate this solar?
There was a period of time that we were looking at some land down at the wastewater treatment site. Seeing that was a lot of it was flood land, and they needed that obviously to spread their product, that was deemed not workable.
Other questions? Roland?
I was just going to say this is a tough one. I don't think it's a no-brainer, to be fair. I think it's really complicated, actually. And there were a lot of good questions posed by each and every one of you that came up and spoke. Questions that we're being asked to turn around and answer to by tomorrow. Like, I just feel like this, I don't feel like we are in a good position to be making a decision so quickly here. John Deere has been a good partner. Does that mean I don't value solar? No, it doesn't mean that. But I also feel like it would be rude to proceed without having a conversation with them about what we're going to do with their land either. I don't think that would reflect well on the city. I mean, it's just, there's so many complicated questions and we haven't had time to thoroughly think them out. It's sort of like betting on tilt. You know, I don't feel good about throwing more staff time and more developer time. I mean, you guys have invested a lot, and thank you for that too. I mean, it's not that we're not interested. It's that we're in a position with tax credits running out where, you know, it's just such high pressure. But I mean, I think I have hope. Faith is maybe strong, but hope that the incentives will return. And I think I would rather spend the meantime figuring out how to position ourselves so that when incentives do return, we're ready. We hit the ground running. We have a plan worked out. So, I mean, in that sense, I hope we can use the time between now and when incentives return to do some good planning about what we're going to do. But I don't feel like it's fair to make these decisions in such a rushed manner.
Anybody else?
Don, could you clarify just a couple technical points? So, how many homes would be powered by the projected solar project?
I don't know if I can give you an exact number, but let me do it this way. So the city of Ames itself uses about 630,000 megawatt hours a year from this solar development. And I just ran the numbers using the 18 megawatts, so I'm going to be a little bit off. So I'm going to try to do the math in my head. So roughly at 18 megawatts, that'll produce about 30 to 35,000 megawatt hours. So what is that? About 5%. If it was a 24.9 megawatt facility, we're probably in that 7 to 8% of Ames electric usage on a megawatt hour on an energy basis. So saying that again, this solar project would provide about 7% of the city's overall energy. That's homes, businesses, everything we use by the city.
Okay. And a number of the speakers characterize this more as a values-based decision, that we just make the decision based on what is good for the environment. And I would remind the community that the council voted unanimously for this project in its original configuration. So I think that's important to keep in mind. But the Climate Action Plan also created the direction that we evaluate a particular project on a cost-benefit basis. And so is it possible to quantify the difference in cost as a result of having to go with a different paradigm here in terms of this project?
So I can answer that a couple of different ways. First off, in looking at this project, by not including enough land to make the 25 megawatts, you'll immediately see about a 25% increase in the cost of the energy. We do what's called a power purchase agreement. So that would raise the cost of the energy out of the project about 25%. The further complicating factor is not meeting what Mr. Bergstrom referred to as safe harbor on that June 3rd would add an additional probably 30% to the cost, because the federal tax credits would be gone. So you would see we would see a rise in our power purchase agreement go up by roughly 55%. Even Mr. Bergstrom said that at prices like that, they wouldn't build the project. It's the pricing would be out of line to do that. Does that answer your question, sir?
Well, I just think it's very important that we understand, everyone up here on the dais believes it's important to add renewable energy as we can, but we can't do this in a way that ignores the cost-benefit analysis for our ratepayers. I want to come back to this because I feel like we're continuing to address this question of why we are here. It seems like as part of the due diligence for evaluating this project to begin with, that there would be an analysis of the available land. And if this John Deere piece was so critical, I'm struggling to understand why wasn't that the very first call that was made in the entire analysis is to figure out what the status of the John Deere land is. So can you help me understand that? From your perspective, was this discussed with the developer?
So I believe when we started the process, so we were looking at the airport, and step one is okay, what is buildable? All right, let's look at everything. Early on in the process, then we engaged Damien, who had the long-range plan. Part of, and this was referred to a little bit, part of that long-range plan is what's going to be built out in the next 10 years, what's going to be built out the next 20 years, and what is the long-term future. And as was pointed out, if the long-range plan says eventually we'd love to have hangars here and we're going to have buildings here and buildings there, it is possible to put in a 20-year solar farm, getting what we need and still being able to expand the airport. Where it gets difficult is when you sit there and say, well, that's the plan, but oftentimes plans don't reflect reality. And who knows, 5 years from now, we could be saying, why did we put solar panels in X? Because we have somebody that wants that property. Conversely, it could be after 20 years, maybe we still don't have the hangars we thought we had, and let's let the panel stay there another 5 years, another 10 years. So it's a chicken and egg. It's a balancing act in terms of, here's the plan. Do we assume that's an aggressive plan? Do we assume that as a short-sighted plan and we're going to be quicker into it. And that's, I think, the struggle that we went through, is to say, realistically, when is the land available? In the case of the John Deere, it was never, I shouldn't say never. When we first looked at it, it's like, okay, let's look at just the farming land. All right, we classified it as what is being farmed. And if we can at least replace the revenue generated by farming, the airport is there's no delta, there's no difference in it. So the John Deere land initially it's being farmed. So I don't know if that helps. So it's farming today, and what can we convert it to solar panels, versus the long range plan and how will it be implemented? Is area A going first, or is it area B? And how do you move the parts around? Because I think everybody agrees, both staff and the developer, the airport is there to be an airport, first and foremost. That's what I never will sit there and say, well, we've got solar panels there, so let's leave the solar panels alone and not fly it, not treat it as an airport. And that's always been understood, that the solar panels come second to airport function.
I guess I understood the question too to be, though, more like why we knew we were mid-contract with John Deere. Why wasn't that mentioned before now?
I'd like to, if you want to answer that question, but I think we're starting to dig in the weeds, just a little bit here in terms of, what we do differently going forward as well too. But if you want to answer the question, why, what Rama just asked, why wasn't that question asked?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the fact that we haven't even had a conversation with John Deere yet.
In your mid lease.
Yeah, and we're mid lease with them, right? Started in 2019 for 10 years. Certainly this, I guess I'm just surprised that this is just being brought up now as a challenge.
I agree.
And I think I will accept part of that from a standpoint that what is being farmed, for example, we would have to give the farmer that's farming everything else a period or a notice to do that. So I was treating it as it's either being farmed, or we could, after a sufficient notice, I think it's a year, we could convert it from farming to solar panels.
Yeah, okay.
Other questions? Comments?
I just want to reinforce, I believe everyone acted in good faith here. We're trying to do what we can to further the climate action plan goals. I think everyone feels this is an awkward spot to be in. I would discourage characterizing this as an existential threat. We just have to make hard decisions up here, and we don't have the luxury of just saying either development or sustainability. We have to balance a variety of different things. So I'm going to be moving for or supporting option 4, discontinuing further consideration. But I just hope it's clear to the community the thought that went into this decision. None of this was done lightly, and I hope that people see a strong commitment that we continue to have for our sustainability goals.
Okay, is there a motion?
I'll move alternative 4.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved to second. Any further discussion?
Oh, do you guys have thoughts, or just what was been said so far?
No, I mean, I wouldn't have anything to add to what you've said. I think you said it well.
Okay. Since Nina's on remote, we'll go ahead and just do a roll call.
Garten,
Aye.
Junk,
Aye.
Corriere,
Aye.
Rollins, Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're on item number 38, 2025-2026 multi-modal roadway improvements.
Public Works employees Damien Pregetzer, Mark Ganson, and Justin Clausen approach the staff table.
Good evening. Tonight we're here seeking direction on the Wilder Boulevard mini roundabout corridor improvements, specifically direction on how staff should proceed following completion of preliminary design and public outreach. For a little background on the project, Wilder Boulevard has had quite a few conversations ever since the developments that led to its connection from Mortensen to Lincoln Way. For reference, it's about 2/3 of a mile of a residential roadway that before 2022 had no stops along it. So speeding's been a concern ever since it was developed and connected. We received quite a few complaints over the years. That initiated a speed study. Data from 2020 and 2021 was utilized to perform that speed study, which was finished in 2022, which showed several areas of excessive speeding of 10% or more. For reference, that would be vehicles traveling faster than 35 miles an hour. So about 1 in every 10 to 1 in every 8 vehicles was traveling 35 miles an hour or more down the local roadway. So pretty significant. It met the threshold that we usually utilize to step in with an engineered solution, being approximately 10%. So we moved forward with two different things. We did a interim always stop control at 2 of the intersections along the corridor, and at the same time, we programmed a project into the CIP for a mini roundabout corridor improvement. And a lot of conversations were had at that time on which treatment would be best. There's a lot of unique characteristics of the neighborhood. The volumes on the side streets are extremely low, which is why a mini roundabout corridor was chosen for programming. So a consultant was brought on board. We initiated design, which led to preliminary design concepts of 3 roundabouts on the corridor. Those concepts were utilized to invite people to a public meeting. We did mailing, we did social media outreach, as well as dynamic message boards on the roadway to try and catch as many people as we could. We had a great turnout at the meeting. Approximately 100 were in attendance, which for reference would be probably 5 to 10 times what we would normally see for a local roadway project. The feedback that we received was mixed, but it certainly leaned negatively towards the proposed mini roundabout corridor. The breakdown for reference was approximately 20% in favor, 30% unsure, and 50% opposed to the proposal. The concerns varied quite a bit. A lot of them were rooted in concerns about pedestrians being able to utilize the mini roundabouts and how to cross them. There's a significant amount of pedestrian volumes in this area. Evenings are extremely high. Daily Park is a big amenity, as well as the school in the area. So we're certainly mindful of that. A lot of the concerns also seem to be derived from unfamiliarity with mini roundabouts, which is natural. This is the first mini roundabout retrofit project in the city. We don't have a project that we can point to within our jurisdiction as a good reference. So certainly some unique concerns to work through there. At the same time, with the public feedback, we are extremely aware of some recent projects that had a lot of complexities as far as weighing public feedback. I want to clarify that some of those projects were arterial roadways with current operational deficiencies, current safety issues, projects that were looking at high levels of investment in short order, and not moving forward with the proposed project would lead to not being able to provide additional infrastructure for different modes. So there's a lot there. This project on Wilder is quite a bit different. It is proactive in nature, and while we certainly want to be on the proactive side of the spectrum, determining how much is a tough balancing point. The we're also dealing with a residential neighborhood that naturally has some ownership of the area, and we love to see that. And that we'd love to see the amount of turnout that we had at the meeting too. That always helps us kind of guide these projects. The other unique aspect here is we do have an interim solution that is currently functioning with the always stops. And while it is interim, and while we do anticipate some degradation of the compliance of those always stops, given the characteristics of the neighborhood, it is currently functioning, which was certainly unique compared to some of our other projects. With all that being said, we do believe there's some additional discretion here as far as how to weigh public feedback. The project has been fruitful already. I do want to clarify that. Initially, we created concepts and templates with the project that are being implemented right now into some proposed developments. So we will be seeing developments utilize mini roundabouts. And we also have a retrofit programmed in the CIP along Hyde Avenue. So we obviously want the first implementation of mini roundabout retrofits to be successful. Part of that we feel is a buy-in from the neighborhood to help push that narrative and provide a successful project that can be talked about, word of mouth can spread, and we can lead to additional buy-in for other projects in the area, because these are a useful tool for the city moving forward. We have pretty limited options as far as traffic calming on some of these long residential collector streets that serve bigger areas, but at the same time have driveways, have front yards. So we want to be mindful of how we implement these moving forward. And that circles why our recommendation tonight is alternative 2, which would be delaying the project, allowing other implementations to occur, and circling back to this project in the area if more issues arise or if more concerns come up. So with that, I can answer any questions.
Thank you. Good presentation. Questions?
Where would the next one be if we were to go with alternative 2? What community can we expect to hear from next?
Hyde is the next one that's programmed. It's a little unique. There's a lot more development occurring there. The picture from the development standpoint has kind of been finalized, so we know that that's going to become an issue pretty quickly. So at the same time as the mini roundabout corridor, we've actually got quite a bit programmed at the same time frame. Shared use path in the area, as well as signalization on Bloomington. So we anticipate kind of a neighborhood-wide improvement at that time.
You said Hyde and what?
Hyde and north of Bloomington. So we've identified 2 intersections on that stretch that would be good from a spacing perspective to maintain the speeds from Bloomington to the north edge of current growth.
And
right
will
now.
Bloomington and Hyde be signalized eventually?
Correct.
Yeah, thank you.
So would that be south of Auburn Trail?
Yes. Yep.
So there'd be 2 intersections
in the
along
current-
that where we have had complaints about, council frequently hears about speeding and stopping.
Yep.
So, okay. And would that be in the near future or a year, 2 years?
I believe it's 2030 and 31, fiscal year 30-31 of the CIP.
Okay. Other questions?
The report's very thorough, but I just two questions. I didn't see any reference to the price tag of this. So if we were to have done the mini roundabouts, can you give us just a sense of the cost of that modification?
Yeah, I believe we had 360,000 programmed for the entire project. That equates to approximately 100,000 per intersection. Obviously, these are the first implementation. We do anticipate learning a little bit as far as cost with the first implementation, but about 100,000 per intersection would be a good ballpark number.
Well, that seems very modest in the terms of the construction that we're doing. I appreciate the fact that there was a crash analysis report. So, I haven't heard any reports about concerns with speeding. And this analysis tool, doesn't appear that there have been many crashes. There's been some property damage. Maybe Damien, throw a softball to you. You've done a good job of educating the council about how you rate roads in terms of their level of safety. How would you view Wilder?
Well, Wilder is one of those locations. I think a theme that we've struggled with across the community is anytime you have a heavily traveled, I'll kind of put air fingers quote, your residential collector street. So Hyde is one, Northwestern is a good example, Wilder's another good example. You probably could name maybe another half dozen. We were very pleased, as we would like to see, low crash rates. And so that's what Mark was talking about. We felt like the speed was there, but it wasn't resulting in actual crashes. And for sure, thankfully, no injuries or any of those other things, especially relative to the high amount of walking and biking that we saw. So we feel like we're in a good spot to try a retrofit. But I would say that the Wilder, maybe perhaps because of the newness of the connection to Mortensen, that we don't have a history of crashes, because up until the point before Mortensen was connected, there was no through traffic. So that's kind of why what I would say the genesis of the project came from, was that connection, and it hasn't yielded into crashes. So I would say that we have other residential collectors. I don't have the data in front of me, but certainly that are older with longer connections that do have crashes that we might consider concerning and put higher on a priority list.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And congratulations on getting that public feedback. I mean, hopefully we'll see more opportunities for people to give feedback like that. Thanks for your comments.
Can you, Mark, you mentioned it. I think it's important for people who are here for this reason or listening. We typically don't do things that are proactive. It's more basically reactive. And there's been lots of people complaining, right, about speed in this area. And so this was basically a response to try and help address that. Is that correct?
Yes. Yep. That's correct.
So we understand that there's people that may have hesitation about that, and maybe about the roundabouts. But the point was, it's not like we're trying to insert, council's not trying to, or staff's not trying to insert themselves in, oh, this is a good place to go ahead and try something we've never done before. It's really trying to find a solution that was in response to what an identified and constituent request and issue was. So I think it's a little different than the way we've operated, previously. But I think it's just, like Tim said, and it's great to hear we had great public feedback and participation, because that's what we really want to see happen. Any questions?
Yeah, there's a list of a couple different alternative approaches in option 4. Have we considered any of those instead of like the mini roundabout approach?
We have. Ultimately, we do feel like the mini roundabouts is the proper technical solution for this area. Obviously, public sentiment weighs in to that decision making. Things are complicated a little bit more with the upcoming splash pad at Daly Park and proposed changes that will make to the volumes that we see on the roadways, the parking that we see on the roadways, and the crossing locations that we see. So some of those alternatives are tough to predict right now, how the splash pad could affect them and their function on this corridor.
Okay, so we might need to get some data on that before adding something else.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. We'll open up public comment. Does anyone want to address council on this topic tonight? And if so, please come to the podium and state your name and ask you to limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. John, did you want to start us off?
John Emery approaches the podium to address council.
You have to figure out getting ready to go.
I was waiting for somebody else. I first apologize because it's been a few years since I've done much public speaking.
It's okay.
And I must ask that the council please talk into their mics. I'm hard of hearing. I'm sure some of the other people are hard of hearing.
Yeah.
And I've dealt with these mics before, and it doesn't carry very well.
Okay.
Okay. I attended the meeting at Edward School, and there's approximately 75 or so. It says 100. I agree. It was quite a crowd. And I talked to many people, and I talked to Mark, that's close. Anyway, he said there's only like 3 or 4 people that had complained about speed and stuff on that street. That's what we were told. Okay. And there was only like two or three people at this meeting that was in favor of these roundabouts, mini roundabouts. The vast number of the neighbors voiced their vehement opposition to the mini roundabouts. Recently, the city has fixed the sidewalk curbs in the area on Frost, Thackeray, Cervantes, and what's another one? Up there farther. By the way, my name is John Emery. I didn't say that at first, and I know how important it is. And they've done the ADA compliance sidewalks, which is good. Now the city wants to tear them back out, move the hydrants. I'm sorry, that's asinine. The cost now I hear that it's going to be $350,000. That's low. They're going to have to move hydrants. That's going to cost big bucks. And I think it's going to cost a pretty penny. And at a cost that wasn't really detailed at the meeting. A simple solution to this problem would be if some of those flashing solar stoplights. You've seen them through town not many, but quite a few places. Simple solution to a simple problem. Stop signs will slow the traffic. And the cost would be hundreds of thousands of dollars difference. My wife and I walk our dog frequently along Wilder and through Daly Park. And we drive Wilder multiple times daily. Yes, people should slow down a little bit, but the speed isn't that outrageous. 35, I don't think I've seen anybody going 35 miles an hour. And a few more stop signs slow it down. Part of the problem is Wilder is a bowl street, and it ends right down there at Daly Park. That's the bottom of the bowl. It's called gravity. It's a law. Cars go faster going downhill. And I don't really see that much of a problem. While we're at the meeting, we were told people don't stop at the stop signs. That's false. I see it every day. I drive it every day. People, for like 90% of the people I see, stop. 90, then that other 5, and probably 4%, maybe more, they might do a California stop. You know, they slow down almost to a dead stop, and then they go through. Yeah, it's not perfect, but it's not running the stop sign. I've never seen a person run the stop sign there.
John, could you bring your comments to a close, please?
I didn't hear what it was
Would you
said.
please bring your comments to a close? You're at over almost 4 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
We were told that Ames didn't have a roundabouts in Ames, and Wilder would be the first one. A lot of kids walk it. That splash pad, which I still don't know the date that it's supposed to open, is an attractive nuisance. It's a wonderful idea. I love the idea of it. And I'm exploring the option to do a bench down there. But when you were kids, did you pay attention to any kind of traffic?
John, are you in favor of any of the options that are presented in the report?
I can't.
Are you in favor of any of the alternatives that are in the report?
No. That's the only solution I see is the stop signs.
Okay, I think council has heard that.
It's the easy solution.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay. I take it I'm done.
Yeah. Thank you.
Tanya Goodwin approaches the podium to address council.
Hi, my name is Tanya Goodwin. I live at 5301 Clemens in Ames. I actually live on the corner of Clemens and Wilder, exactly where one of the roundabouts would be. The first thing I want to do is thank all of the people who have put in the effort to try to consider different options for that corner. We have lived in our house for 20 years. We have lived in it when there was nothing there. We have lived in it when there were 2 yield signs there. I think we lived in it when there were 4 yield signs, and now we live in it when there are 4 stop signs. To be totally honest, I'm not sure where I stand with the roundabouts, but what I do know is living on that corner, people do not stop there. We have been out on our front porch and watched children walking by and people not stopping. We have watched 2 cars come to that stop sign at the same time, and they're kind of trying to figure out if anyone is going to stop. So while, again, I'm not sure where I stand with it, I just appreciate the continued looking at it and trying to keep it safe. Once Wilder became a through street, and now that north of Lincoln Way is also growing, a lot of people drive through our neighborhood to get to Highway 30, which is a great route, right? But I also walk there often, and I just want to make sure that we're constantly looking at that spot. So while I'm not in favor or opposed to any option right now, I just want to thank everyone for continuing to keep the safety of especially the children that are walking to school there every day. And also we have a few elderly people that live in our neighborhood. We have a woman who uses a walker every day. So I just wanted to say that I appreciate it.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Beth McPhail approaches the podium to address council.
Evening, Council. My name is Beth McPhail, and I live at 5458 Frost Drive, and I am one of the original residents of the Bentwood subdivision. I have lived there the entire time. I've seen it grow from a couple of houses to the wonderful, friendly neighborhood that I live in. I do not want a roundabout. I feel it will just degrade our neighborhood as well as our way of life, because I do live on a cul-de-sac that I will have a very hard access to get out to go left. And I have seen these mini roundabouts in Des Moines, and they are downright dangerous. So I do recommend and respectfully request that you shelve this project, the recommendation 2 on the council, and put in flashing stoplights, put in a speed sign up on the light poles like I see on Northwestern and also on Ontario. I do stop at the stop signs. I do bike in that area. I do walk in that area. My grandson and I walk and bike all the time, and he is almost 13. So I respectfully submit my request that you vote for recommendation 2 to put in the enhanced stop and and put the roundabouts back on the shelf for a while. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, we'll close public input. Council?
I'd like to follow up on the question that Rachel asked. Under number 4, one of the options is a dynamic speed feedback sign. Seems like a pretty low cost thing to add. Are there any downsides of adding one of those?
So the concern with the option 4, all those traffic calming features would be something you would typically see on a road without traffic control. So one of the concerns with the ideas that were brought up is that they some of them are indirect, others are like indirectly in conflict with the always stops that are out there today. So the dynamic feedback sign, all the places you see them, you'll notice they are a long continuous flow. So like Ontario, Stang, Northwestern, all those places you're not stopping. So it won't have the effect that we think it will have when you are stopping and starting from stop signs. And just like I think we talked about this on Stang, that's maybe a great example of why we saw a project there, is that over time, people get kind of apathetic to it. It has a reduced amount of effect. Like when we first put it in, I think we get great compliance, but over time, just like a lot of these traffic calming measures that don't have a physical treatment like the roundabouts would, they have the raised median in the center. A physical barrier is the strongest and longest lasting. All these other things are just things to gauge your attention. So if you were just distracted and your speed kind of ramped up because you were distracted, then dynamic feedback signs will catch your attention, you'll slow down. But if you are going through this corridor just to get through it, you don't live in the neighborhood, but you're trying to bypass, let's say perhaps you don't want to go to Lincoln Way in Dakota. You want to get around this area. Those dynamic feedbacks for that type of trip are not very effective. So we could do it. I think they're around, are they 15,000, 10,000 each? They're around a $10,000 to $15,000 sign. I mean, they're an expensive sign. Yes, relatively cheap, but for a sign, they're expensive. And then I think our concern would be that with the stop signs, they wouldn't have the effect that we want.
That was a really comprehensive answer. Okay, maybe we'll just try alternative 2. I'll move alternative 2.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
I mean, I would just add, I mean, typically I want to follow staff suggestions here. I mean, I think I'm not against the input, right? But I think everyone drives. And so everyone thinks they're an expert on driving. And I would argue everyone eats, but we're not all gastroenterologists, right? It's the science behind traffic. Like, I believe that. And so I believe if staff think it will be safer, it will. Now, that being said, if staff are all right, waiting, trying it out in different neighborhoods first and coming back to it, I'm okay with that. And, given the feedback we've gotten, that's a happy medium, and that seems to make most people happy. But if we do reevaluate this corridor in the future, if safety continues to be an issue, if maybe temporary fixes don't help, I do hope we return to this same concept. And then maybe we'll have some examples where we've proven that it works. So,
yeah. Do we need to include a mechanism for when we're going to revisit it?
Yeah.
In the future?
It seems like there are concerns that are very warranted to not just say we're delaying it, but there's no timeline for revisiting it, because I don't think the issues that are being expressed today are going to go away. If anything, they're going to get worse.
I agree. Speeding will just keep getting worse in that zone for sure.
Well, one thing that I might be able to offer is that, as you know, we update our long-range transportation plan every 5 years. A huge component of that analysis is a region-wide, MPO region-wide crash study. We look into operations. So on a regular basis, we are tracking data. And especially if we ever go to update that Community Safety Action Plan, that CSAP, that's even a deeper dive into safety. So I think from Public Works' standpoint, we're constantly monitoring crash statistics and operational issues. I would expect too, if we did see a significant degradation, I would hope that the public would also start to reach out and we'd get referrals on speeding or safety or other certain things.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I expect, right? Like a year is going to go by, we're going to get a letter, an email saying you need to do a study of this area, and we're going to go back and have this same discussion. So I think I'm trying to play out, like, is there a time where we think it's important to go back and revisit it rather than waiting for someone, because it is subjective, right? Like, we're looking at the email. Some people are saying there's zero problem in our neighborhood. We love it. Everything's wonderful and safe. And then you have people who are expressing real concerns. So I think it's hard to parse through that sometimes.
All right, there's been a motion made and seconded. Those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining?
Nay.
Okay, motion carried. Did you want to follow up with anything in terms of giving a direction for
I mean,
revisit?
what's appropriate? Like, is 12 months too short?
Yeah.
12
months is probably pretty quick.
Okay.
I think shoot for maybe 5 years. I certainly wouldn't let go over 10 years.
That feels like an eternity to me,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah. Would it not
3
be?
to 5.
I'm just thinking after like the splash pad opens, I think 12 months might be a reasonable time to revisit it if the traffic has changed.
What is the timeline on the splash pad opening?
Susan here.
Can we? Nobody knows. Oh, okay.
No one knows.
It's on you, Steve.
You know.
Sorry.
This
It's
summer.
all right.
This
It's
summer.
okay. I tried.
I'm
I
not sure
tried.
exactly.
All right.
Susan will know when she comes
All right,
back.
come on. I'm losing control of this meeting. All right. Did you want to ask or make a motion regarding asking you to revisit?
Well, it would
the-
be helpful to know when the splash pad was opening.
How about somebody want to do a year after the splash pad opens?
That seems reasonable.
And then revisit with a speed, like additional study of the location, or how far do you want that to go?
Doesn't Damien just push a button and all of a sudden all the stuff just kind of comes out, or just kidding? I mean, I think we're not trying. I think we're sensitive.
Yeah, I don't want to micromanage.
I think I'd recommend this. I would recommend doing that because we could look
Okay.
back at the data from 2022
Okay.
and compare and then bring it to you and say, what are the changes?
Yeah.
That would be a reasonable request.
Okay.
I would move that we have staff complete a speed study of the corridor a year after the splash pad opens and place the item on a future council agenda.
I'll second.
All right. Those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Anything else, council? All right. Thank you, gentlemen. How many people are here for item number 45, which is Tabor Road or Drive? I know Keith is. Okay, all right. So, council, I'm going to move Tabor Road, item number 45 up on the agenda. We're already at 8:15. People are waiting, and we got other things to take care of. So,
You're getting a chance to hear something interesting. A lot of bounce in the solar. It's fascinating.
so do we run item number 45? Tabor Road. That-
46.
Yeah, it's 46.
That's true.
Or no, it's 45.
Mine says 45. Time out. We're going to talk about hearing on rezoning a parcel at 5120 Tabor Drive, whether it's 45 or 46. That's what we're going to talk about. So. I somehow got either the wrong agenda or
It's 46 online. It's 45 on ours.
What item got added or missed?
I don't know, but
Weird.
just telling you.
okay. Item 46. We're taking care of the 5120 Tabor Drive from Agriculture A to FSRL is what we're going to talk about now.
Housing Director Kelly Diekman and Planner Benjamin Campbell approaches the staff table.
So, Mr. Mayor, while we're getting ready for the presentation, I just want to confirm, I sent a notice this afternoon that a petition for a protest of the rezoning was intended to be filed. We have received a copy, or not a copy, the original signatures on such a petition. Staff did have a chance to review a copy of this earlier today. We believe they've met the threshold for the petition of protest. So what that means is you will need 5 affirmative votes tonight to approve this to approve the rezoning. Okay.
Thank you.
And I'm going to give this to the city.
And you had, as a city attorney, looked at it too?
Or say again?
Mark, have you looked at it? You're good?
I trust Kelly.
All right, very good. All right.
He was
Kelly,
had a copy of it earlier.
Is it 5 votes? We have 5 votes tonight because of Gloria's absence. So it's 5 out of 5?
It's yes, we have to have 5 out of 5. Regardless, for this one, SC 5 of the sitting council, 6 people, not just those that are present.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Okay.
Good evening. The proposed property is on Tabor Drive. It's 1.95 acres.
It is currently zoned mostly agricultural. A small portion on the west end is zoned FSRL. That part was originally a part of an outlot that was intended for future development, which did not happen. It was incorporated into both this parcel and the Lutheran Church of Hope property, which is to the south. The property is an outlot. It was platted with the Lutheran Church of Hope property to the south when that property was created. This property was not, the subject property was not ever owned by the Lutheran Church of Hope. It was retained by the longtime property owner who sold the church that property and then sold this parcel to a developer. The proposed zoning is for FSRL for the entirety of the property. You can see here on the aerial that the west side of the property is mostly grassy, and then there are trees to the east side. This general area was row crops 25 years ago or so. The flat area to the west of what is a man-made pond there was row crop, as was the Sunset Ridge development. The pond was probably built in the 1950s or so, but it is man-made. It is not natural. The request is to rezone the property in its entirety to FSRL. This does come with a master plan. That's a requirement for FSRL. The master plan in this case is very simple. It primarily designates the property as residential with a range of between 7 and 9 units. So this does not, what we're discussing this evening, the rezoning does not include lot layout, does not include subdivision or the preliminary plat. The preliminary plat will come back to council at a later date. The FSRL zoning does require a 10% open space that is required as a part of the development. That is still being determined exactly where that could go. It could go as a part of this development. It would just have to be designated formally, or it could, the developer is also considering becoming a part of the Sunset Ridge HOA and contributing into those fees, and then you could meet the 10% open space with that requirement. The comprehensive plan does call for this to be RN3, which is residential neighborhood expansion. So the surrounding area is also RN3. So the FSRL zoning is one of the specific zoning districts that is called for in RN3. The area is already served with city street and with all utilities, so there would be no expansion. Notice was sent to all property owners within 400 feet. There was a Planning and Zoning Commission meeting on May 6th. The commission did vote to recommend approval. At that meeting, there was a one neighborhood who lives on the north side of the street there who did speak in opposition to the rezoning. Some of the concerns raised included the open space and specifically a comment about wetlands. This property was studied extensively as a part of the Lutheran Church of Hope development. There was an outside consultant that was brought in who specifically studied the site for wetlands. And you can see there the little hatched part at the north end of the pond was the only wetland that was found. It is just to the south of this development, the Tabor development, so it is not a part of it. It is not formally designated as a jurisdictional wetland by the Army Corps of Engineers. There would have to be a separate process, but it is unlikely to be a jurisdictional wetland because it is part of a man-made pond. The pond does drain into a creek, an unnamed tributary that leads down to Clear Creek up to the northeast. To the west of the man-made pond, there is currently constructed, it's not shown in this aerial, but it's there now, a retention detention area for the church. When that was designed, it also took into account this subject property, that the drainage, that facility was sized appropriately and intended to take all of the drainage from the Tabor Drive property into that retention detention facility, which then drains into the pond, which then drains into the unnamed tributary into the creek. The area is not the area to the west. The retention detention area is not a wetland, but it will take on water in significant rain events. As Kelly mentioned, we did receive the valid petition regarding the opposition, and I do believe that there are several members of the neighborhood who are here to speak this evening, and I can answer any questions.
Thanks, Benjamin. Questions?
Thanks for that report. Could you give us an overview of the options that staff has provided us and the difference it would make? Because we're using a lot of acronyms, but it'd be helpful to sort of translate this into how this would actually impact the neighborhood. Could you speak to that?
How the development of this property would impact the neighborhood?
No, I apologize. So maybe just give us, maybe flesh out a little more FSRL, any other zoning options that would be reasonable, just so we could get a vision for how this property would change.
Sure. So FSRL stands for Floating Suburban Residential Neighborhood Low Density. And so there's a limited range of units that are allowed within the density, within that range. The proposal of 7 to 9 units is well below the maximum number that are allowed there. There are still minimum lot sizes that you would have to have there for single family homes. I believe it's 6,000 square feet. Again, we have not seen the preliminary plat or the final plat yet, but in discussions with the developer, he is also here this evening. Lots that his intention is to build lots that match the surrounding lots in size, which are bigger. They're on average about 10,000 square feet or so in the surrounding area. The lots would front onto Tabor Drive. It would have driveways onto there. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Other questions? All right, open public comment. You can address council. Please come to the podium, state your name. And
Mayor, do we want the applicant to speak first to describe?
Oh, sure. Yeah, go ahead, Keith. Thanks, Kelly.
Applicant Keith Arneson approaches the podium to address council.
Keith Arneson, 4114 Cochran Parkway. Maybe I can just ask a procedural question. Hopefully this is not a line, but finding out this information at the last minute that we have someone missing from council and finding out that a petition is certified at the moment I'm about to give my presentation is a little less than maybe what I would have expected coming in here tonight. So one of the questions I would have procedurally is, can this be tabled until all members are here?
You weren't informed?
I was informed that a petition had been handed in, not certified, and I didn't know that Gloria wasn't going to be here.
So the public is not required to give any notice. They could show up tonight and hand that in. The neighbor contacted us this afternoon, and Benjamin did reach out to tell Keith that this looks like this was coming in. So until we receive the written petition, I can't say it's valid or not. So that's why it's so late in the process.
But saying it's unanimous as a vote, as opposed to having, I'm prepared to go forward with my comments, I guess, if that's where we're at. I don't know that I feel like it's necessarily fair.
Well, you can give your comments. Council still has the option to table it to a future agenda, Keith.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, considering that there is dissent, I feel like I need to elaborate just a little bit more. I think many of you know me. Not all of you, but I guess what I'd like to do is I'd like to talk just a little bit about the fact that, I've been developing since 2006. I started the company in 2003. I've talked about this before, that I'm a boutique developer that develops smaller parcels of ground. I don't go to the edge of town. I'm not third gen. I don't do 160 acres on the edge of town. Now, I thought, and I guess I still believe, that there was a certain priority or possibly even favor given to developers that would try to do some things as infill. So I do infill, but I primarily do infill because this is going to sound terrible, but in some regards, infill is leftovers. The big developers go after big things on the edges of town. They leave pockets. And so when you're not a third gen guy and you come to town and you're doing my average size of a development is about 52. I've had several communities of 52 lots. So when I come in, what I'm looking at now would be certainly the smallest piece of ground that I've ever looked at, but I think it's a desirable piece of ground. I'm sure the neighborhood feels like it's desirable. But at any rate, I started with a subdivision called the Estates at Nature's Crossing, and that was in 2006. And I developed 24 large lots. And most of those lots were half acre. Some were as large as an acre. Most of the houses in there were large and are large. At the same time, to balance that, I went across the street and took a piece of RH ground that I had that I didn't have to rezone. I did rezone the horse pasture that is Nature's Crossing and also extended into a piece of ground behind the middle school. I tore down, horse buildings and barns and what have you to develop that out. I refurbished 2 homes. Those of you who have been here a long time will know the Bud Dotson and the Cochran's house, but redid those and tried to incorporate them into the neighborhoods that I was doing. They were horse pastures. They were filled with large trees that arborists had placed in there from Iowa State University. They had planned those communities. It does have a stream. College Creek runs through it. It is very desirable. It has some of the same attributes that this neighborhood is concerned about me spoiling. It has some of those same attributes. And then I've gone into other pieces of ground. You were talking about one tonight. I did 52 lots.
Keith, can I just ask, is this all germane to what you're trying to?
Well, I guess, all right, let me jump directly to the point. I guess
that'd be helpful.
What I was trying to do as a developer was I was trying to follow your lead. What do I mean by that? I mean that the city council goal, I think you voted on it February 10th of 2026. I'm paraphrasing, but increase the quantity of new construction housing. I believe this was the same goal, your second goal. I believe this is the same goal that you had in 2024 and 2025. In 2005, Ames had 240 single-family permits, attached and detached, not multifamily. 2017, more of an average year, 125 single-family building permits. 2004, 59. Last year got up to 68. I think it was probably less the tax abatement and probably more that certain developments that were attractive to the community came online. So then in February, around February 27th to 24, you adopted the tax abatement for single family homes. Historic legislation. I've thanked you before. I'll thank you again. More help is going directly. Most of that help was going directly to new home buyers. Then late in 25, you adopted the development assistance to bring more lots to market. You helped the developers and the buyers by increasing inventory and choice and type of lot and license and housing. And it also brings lots to builders who don't do their own development. The city manager prides himself on cost efficiency. I think all of you do as well. I think the community appreciates the fact that we're efficient in regards to how we utilize our property taxes. My request will not require a street. It exists already. It has to be one of the most efficient pieces of ground that you will ever develop if you choose to go that way. The street already exists. The pipes under the ground already exist. You already run the snow plows over it, the street lights, what have you. Street maintenance is already a cost of the city. Double loading will increase efficiency. Double loading means houses on both sides, not just one side. It's also a piece of infill land. Again, I thought that was a goal of the city, was to try to be efficient in regards to its utilization of use of land that's going to develop into housing. The city does not have to extend or oversize infrastructure to the edge of town. or to this parcel. And most citizens agree that developing undeveloped land within the city limits, within the school district, is a wise use of resources and reduces sprawl. I guess the only other thing I'd like to say before I step away is I've heard some of the comments, I've read some of the letters. There are comments about you don't want to lose the view. You would, I think people would like to develop that piece of ground into walking trails and things like that. Just one thing I would say as a developer, when you own these pieces of ground, they're owned by private individuals. They're not public land. It is not, I would like to, if this is not something that, if I'm on the wrong track, if I'm not doing what it is you think we should be doing for the community, and you think it would be a better use for the city to purchase this land, take it out of housing inventory stock and create a park out of it, you know, that's okay. That certainly is your prerogative. It's not the understanding that I have for the goals for a developer or for a builder. And I was just trying to do what I thought was in the interest of the city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions?
All right. Others want to address council?
Jonathan Closen approaches the podium to address council.
Just state your name. No, you just go up here and just.
You got to ask.
What's that?
The speaker has a few slides for their points, or do you want us to put that up for him to talk to it?
Sure. If you have that ability to do it.
Okay. Thanks. So I'm Jonathan Clausen. I live at 5119 Tabor Road. And so we put together the petition to prevent the rezoning of this property from agricultural to residential use. So I've talked to, in that red circle, all the neighbors that I've talked to do not want this to go through because this is a pristine land. It has woodland and that wetland and that pond, and then it was prairie land for a long time. So we would like that to remain that for the benefit of the community. And if we go on to the next slide there. So this was, for example, a professor here at Iowa State University. I work at Iowa State University too. I'm a professor in mechanical engineering. Chris is in civil and environmental engineering. I put nitrate sensors into the field and do pesticide sensors and monitor water quality and so forth. And Chris and I were talking about this land. We really feel that there needs to be a true hydrological study of this land because there's runoff leading off to that, to the pond. We think this land needs to be preserved in order to prevent further erosion and pollution. So that was one thing we'd like to have before this is done, that there's a hydrological study. And if you go to the next slide, there are a lot of observed wildlife in the area. We do believe there's the endangered barn owl and the red-shouldered hawk in this area. And other residents have witnessed and told me about coyotes, wet-tailed deer, snapping turtles, snakes, and so forth. So it really is this kind of ecological wonder that goes into the woods that, you know, are in that central Ames area, all the way to Pamela Woods at the Iowa State University. So we are the city of trees, and we want to preserve this because once we lose that, we can't get it back. And in Iowa, there's so few open wild spaces left that this will really be beneficial for our children and so forth. If we go to the next slide, I just want to show the map here. That's the area there in question, of course. A lot of people felt like this was going to be preserved by the church. There's going to be a walking trail. So they kept reporting to me. I'm kind of becoming a spokesman for our neighbors, but they felt misled that this was going to be, in fact, maintained by the church and not part of housing. Then if we go into the next slide, you can kind of see this area. So in red there, right above that pond in the central, that's the area we're talking about. That would just add 5 to 8 homes to this area. But in North Sunset Ridge, there's about 63 homes that are being developed. To the west of Sunset Ridge Park, there's also more homes. This whole area has over 300 homes. So we don't think 5 to 8 homes is a very wise decision to put here. It's not really going to benefit, provide a lot more homes to Ames, and it's going to destroy so much of the wildlife and what this community wants to be a favorable place that people will like to come to and thrive. So I could just, and then the next slides are just a couple of images. This is that pond you can see through the woods there. You'd really have to like take out those trees, and then the wetland strip right in front of it is right on someone's back step. We just don't see how there's really space for houses right in that pond. And if you go ahead to the next slide, there is currently a ledge here right along. You can kind of see on this right side image here. It's a very narrow edge. It's a ledge. It's about the size of maybe our front yards across the street. So we think there's going to have to be a lot of moving dirt and extra dirt infill here. So we're worried that this has happened in other areas such as the North Ridge on the North Ames, where homes are built too close to wetland areas. The foundations crack whenever there's huge range events every 5 to 10 years. There can be flooding in the basement. So there's concerns of that. And then on the next slide, we can kind of see on this right, that's the prairie grass, what it used to look like for 25 years ago. It was a prairie where deer and other wildlife were able to come to. Then the final slide here, I guess that's it on this slide, but you can see that it wasn't a nice prairie. So we would like the city, to think about maybe purchasing this, or maybe have our HOA have an opportunity to meet as the Sunset Ridge to see if we could somehow put forward funds to save this green space in Ames. So we'd like you to not go forward with this rezoning, of course.
Very good. Thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody else?
Trevor Huey approaches the podium to address council.
My name's Trevor Huey. I'm on 414 Hartford Drive, so that's the corner lot in the top left there. So one of the reasons why we moved into that house is we were really excited about having that natural field right behind our house. I'll say since living there, I have 4 kids, and it's always been a joy for them to look out the window and they see rabbits coming out of that field, deer crossing the yard. My wife is maybe not as big fan of the deer getting in the garden, but that's besides the point. We even, at one point towards the end of last season, there was a turtle that came out from the pond and laid eggs right at the border of our house there. But then the developers came through and cleared out all of that land. We'd been watching for those turtles to come out, but they were not. Anyway, they didn't. So I know as well, speaking to some of the concerns of destroying remaining land for natural wildlife, we just took our kids to Birds Unlimited, had this presentation around owls the past a few weeks ago, where they talked to us about the disappearing areas of the habitats for these animals, and it just feels like it's happening right in our backyard. So obviously I would also like to see this area preserved for my kids and for future generations and for the wildlife that's there. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Myra Mendoza approaches the podium to address council.
Hi. I'm Myra Mendoza, 5125 Tabor Drive. So the front area is actually right in front of our front yard. So I'm not really good at public speaking, so I wrote a little bit of something here. I'm originally from California, and so it's highly condensed in that area. And I think we all need to take a step back, and be a little responsible before we irreversibly cut into this precious land. I love Ames. I love the opportunities that it presents to my children. We have 3 of them. I like the people. And most importantly, I like that large town feel, but with the small town values. And selfishly, I would like to preserve what little green space we have left in our community. And I understand that at the end of the day, no one makes money out of a strip of land that just sits there. But the preservation of this green space for the community would be a priceless testament of these small town values that I know that we would like to uphold. That's about it. Thank you.
Jill Beyer approaches the podium to address council.
Got one more and I'll make it quick. My name is Jill Beyer. I am at 512 Westfield Road, so that's just kind of around the corner. I apologize for the way I'm dressed. I came directly from a softball game, but that was how important this was to me to be here. I would echo the sentiments of my neighbors. And one other thing I would add that I'm concerned about personally, I also have 3 children that walk up and down Tabor Road every day to get to the bus stop and then back home. Tabor is more narrow than the other roads than Westfield, about 3 feet more narrow. If we add houses and driveways on the other side of that street, obviously it's going to be more congested with cars. My understanding is that those homes will be smaller, so I'm going to assume the garages will also be smaller. It would probably lead to more street parking. It's already a bit of a hassle sometimes when people are parked along the street on Tabor. It's a windy road as well. So my concern would just be with my kids walking up and down that road. You know, at best, it's a frustration to get around the excess cars there, and at worst, there could be injury or something that happens. So that is my piece. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, we'll close public comment. So to Mr. Arneson's question, I think into councils, we just found out about the petition late this afternoon. Is there an interest in tabling this and putting it on the next agenda or
No.
moving forward?
I think we can move forward.
Okay. Discussion.
Well, I mean, I want to thank everyone that came to give their input. This is a hard one, you know. We understand anytime new housing is proposed in a neighborhood, it's almost always met with reluctance. In fact, in my experience, it has always been met with reluctance. Whenever we try to add housing, this you know, we hear similar things. I think this is a pretty low impact development. You know, we're not talking high or even medium density, but low density. To me, it just matches the way Tabor looks the rest of the way down Tabor. You know, and we did just add a 50-acre park with potential to become larger just to the north, and eventually it will have connection through the subdivision that's there. It doesn't yet, but it will. So, you know, you will have park nearby, but we heard at the beginning of the meeting the need for housing. You know, we need it. And if we don't do infill, we will continue to take new land in a sprawling fashion. And that's not sustainable for a number of reasons, right? And taking wildlife in that way is not any better. So, but I think Mr. Arneson was right in that council has been supportive of housing and has been supportive of infill. And to me, this is a low intensity infill opportunity. So I'll be supportive.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I would echo. You folks stayed late in the meeting, and it was a very articulate presentation. I appreciate the work that went into that didn't just create itself. And so thanks for the thoughtfulness. I think it's a challenge when you buy into an area and there are open lots. And so with that comes a bit of an unknown as far as how that land will develop. And so that was something that was baked in to your purchase from the very beginning. So one of the advantages of buying into an existing neighborhood is that generally have a little more stability as far as how that neighborhood will go going forward. So that was something that was baked into this. And for the reasons that Brian indicated, I don't feel like there's a compelling reason from an ecological perspective. I think your best arguments are ones of green space. But as Brahman indicated, Ontario Park you have the largest park in town within a close distance to your property. So I think that's a harder argument to make. So I'll be supportive of the development.
All right. Any other comments? Otherwise, entertain a motion.
I'll move alternative 1.
Second.
and that is to approve the first reading and rezoning. All right, roll call.
Junk.
Aye.
Corriere.
Aye.
Rollins. Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Okay. Very good. So this would come back to council in 2 weeks for the second
There's
reading. For
two additional readings. There's a requirement for a zoning agreement prior to third reading, which is customary for any time there's a master plan.
Can I have one follow-up question? So in terms of if the neighborhood wanted to continue to track along with and give public input on how this develops and lays out, maybe this is what you're indicating, where would those logical places be? I'd love to give.
So there's one more step. So presuming that you follow through in the next two readings and rezone the property, there will be a preliminary plat that comes next. That's a public hearing also with the Planning and Zoning Commission and with the City Council. That's the project documents. It'll have the lot layout as well as the details about the utility extensions into the lots, and to be able to answer or review any other questions about stormwater that would go into actually building on those lots.
So, I mean, I'm just one council member, but the Planning and Zoning Commission is really our front line in these steps. I spend a lot of time looking over, I watch their meetings, and I review their comments. And so that would be a good place to do a deep dive on the proposed preliminary plat.
All right. Thank you. We're going to return back to item number 39 and 40.
Can we do a 5-minute break?
Yes, so I can get my brain wrapped around the agenda. Thank you. All right, we're back to take a 5-minute break. What?
John, there's 236s on the.
Title card, Recess Ames City Council. Public Works employees Damian Pregetzer and Justin Clausen sit at the staff table.
All right, we'll move on to item number 40.
Well, good evening, council. I think as staff, we wanted to give you an update on a pretty significant project that's happened at the airport, which is the reconstruction of the main runway. So in the staff report here, and maybe I'll highlight that we're not asking for any council action on this item. We just want to give you an update. So you can see in the report, there is a schedule. So coming back here on June 9th, we will be presenting plans and specifications for this reconstruction project. Maybe kind of a quick overview of the map that Justin has up. So the main runway is highlighted in green. That is where we are completely removing the existing runway and paving a brand new one. You might kind of be asking yourself, like, what we're going from what to what. So the current runway will support aircraft up to about 38,000 pounds. This new one will exceed around 170,000 pound landing weight. So if that gives you any kind of indication of how much thicker the pavement will be. So you're kind of wondering, well, what size the aircraft is that? That is like a Boeing 737-800 is about that 100. So like that's a small commercial aircraft is what that, or maybe even mid-sized commercial aircraft. And then when you go to that size of aircraft, you have to fix all the things associated with the runway that are not sized appropriately. So that's why you see those orange areas where we're fixing some of the taxiways and widening them out. So the schedule that's in the staff report, like I said, we'll be taking plans and specs here coming in the first meeting in June. What the FAA has told us, because this project is on kind of an accelerated schedule, as is all their projects recently, they're just relatively overwhelmed with projects in the central region, that we have to report to them by June 30th. So we will actually receive bids from contractors on June 30th, and then we will give to the FAA a number so that they can start the process of putting together a congressional package of all the different projects in our region that eventually will get discretionary funding. And so then what we would do once we know a bid number, because that's maybe one of the unique things about airport projects is they don't give us a grant up front. The grant is always given based upon an actual bid number. So we will take that number and come back to council for a recommendation on the award for the first meeting in July. which I believe is July 14th. So what that would mean then is, and maybe the one unique thing is because of the size of the project, we expect this project to be somewhere between 25, maybe up as high as $27 million. We'll actually have to see what the bids are. Well, anytime you get a project that big, the FAA, well, Congress will not issue a single grant for that size. So they split it into two. And so what this maybe relatively, this is, by the way, this is a simplified project schedule, the best I could get it down to. In order to meet kind of a financial security, what we feel from staff is a financial security for the city, is that we don't want to authorize any work to a contractor that isn't funded by a grant. That's just way too, that's a huge financial burden that the city just cannot bear. So what we've tried to do in this, with this schedule, the way we are structuring bids, the way we're structuring the phasing and the notice to proceed, so all the details of how this project will be managed, the effort is to do two things. One is minimize the financial liability to the city for how much time we would be kind of in a limbo state without that second grant. And then the other items would be to minimize the amount of full closures of the airport, so that we're having the least amount of effect on our airport users and the business financial viability of our FBO. So can you go back to the map, please, Just? So what you can see and what is shown in the chart, so we will take bids, like I said, on June 30th and make recommendation on July 14th. And the very next day, we'll turn around and we will ask for as much money, because we will bid the entire project. We will ask for as much money as we can get under the first grant. So what we're being told from the FAA is that Congress has authorized this first grant in a 95-5 share. So we would be getting 95% funding. And so we were trying, and then the next year, the final year of the transportation bill, it goes back down to the normal level, which is 90%, 10%. So we will try to get as much work authorized under the first grant to minimize how much local funding we need. Then they would be able to start in those red areas that are shown on this, which is just drainage improvements. They might do some mobilization. They might do things like stored materials and so forth. Then they run out of construction season. So it would be the end of the year, because the whole goal is that once they start the paving, like including the removals, the dirt work, all of it, we want them to begin and almost work continuously without stopping. Otherwise, it would extend the closure of the airport and the impacts of the project over multiple seasons, which is something we really are trying to avoid. So what that means is that there would be a time period, and you can see that in the middle of the schedule, where we start to get into the spring of 2027. And so once we go past the federal fiscal year in October of this year, we cannot submit. We had the one bid, but we can't submit for the second grant until December. So we have essentially from December until let's say April, in May, where the FAA is starting the grant offers for that federal fiscal year. Now, earlier in the year at the spring conference, they had some airports by April already have the grants for that federal fiscal year. So it's clearly possible. What that would mean, though, is essentially we would have maybe a 2-month window if they take as long as they could possibly take, which would take us the second grant into the month of May. There would be work that they would start on the paving under the first grant. And we just wouldn't allow a notice to proceed. That's what those blue squares are for. We wouldn't allow a notice to proceed for work that we expect to be covered under the second grant. It's a little bit complicated, but we have both the structure of the agreement, the structure of the project management that would protect the city. And we feel as staff that 2-month overlap where they're still expending all the work under the first grant. So it's funded work, fully funded work. And we would not leave, like none of that authorized work would ever leave the airport if we didn't get that second grant in the condition where you couldn't open it back up. So essentially, under the worst possible case scenario is that we would not get the second grant. We would have, I believe I said that in the report, you'd have 2 new ends to the runway and drainage improvements. And
Then we
we'll-
could stop there. We could stop there. We don't want to.
You could stop there and open the airport fully back up. Yes.
That's how we're going to protect against this unusual. We're going to be going with 2 contracts, grants, which is unusual, without a guarantee on the second grant. So we got to be able to stop because you don't want to pay 100% of that second part of it.
Yeah.
And then closure, just briefly talk about the closure, what they should expect, both in the intersection of the runway and then the runway itself.
So as you can see, you can go back to the schedule, Justin. So you can see that once they start the paving of both the removals and the paving of the main runway, it will be closed. The crosswind 1331, the shorter runway, will be open. So the main runway will be closed from April to roughly October. The full airport will have to close when they get into the runway intersection. And the reason why is because once that's closed, there won't be any remnant piece of runway that you can actually use. And that's in the way we've tried to phase the project, and what we will have the contractor required to do is make that in kind of a 3-month window. So at that point, I think our FBO would operate down in Ankeny. So any users that still need services would also move down, and we would have obviously once in July, when we are recommending award, we'll be able to notify those users, and they'll have roughly a year to make accommodations for that 3-month window where the airport will be fully closed.
Now, are the users of the airport and the FBO aware of this project and the closing of it?
So this report that you're looking at tonight and that graphic that we showed, I have emailed. I have a master email list of all the airport users, which includes the land lease and the T-hangar tenants and anyone else who's been asked to be put on that list. I get it from our FBO. They manage that list. They have this report. They've known about the project in general sense for, I would say, probably 2 years now. But we hadn't got to this level of detail because the FAA hadn't given us guidance.
That's the reason we're publicizing it now. We're not making a decision. This gives time to give you feedback from the users if there's any disagreement, right? So it's unusual. 2 separate grants, no guarantee on the second grant. And we've got a strategy to minimize the risk to the city.
Damien, I know Ankeny is currently going through construction. Will the construction be completed by the time our runway gets closed?
Yeah, that's our understanding. Absolutely. Yes.
All right. Any questions?
Can I take a step back? I'll be really tight. It's late. The public is watching this. What is the basis for adding this additional capacity? Who's driving this? These planes, if you call this a mid-sized plane, is this like a 100-passenger plane?
Well, the largest plane that could be facilitated, I don't know the exact passenger count, but if you've taken a flight where you have like 3 seats and 3 seats, so it's like each row has 6 seats, it's that size of aircraft. But that is not what we're expecting here. The type of aircraft that we are expecting to come in on a regular basis is like football teams, basketball teams, volleyball, which are significantly smaller than that Boeing I gave the example. The Boeing is the largest possible aircraft that we would ever come in. But
maybe you're asking why couldn't we have something with less weight? Is that possible?
Yeah, a typical size of the charter aircraft that we see is in the 70 to 100,000 pound range.
So it still had to be increased.
Yeah, and the thing is, once you get to, if I'm quoting this right, I believe a 50 passenger limit or higher, you don't become a commercial airport, but you have to start to use, that aircraft has to be checked by the TSA. So for example, what would happen is if you had a football team, in theory, come to Ames, they would check them before they get on the plane. So they arrange for TSA to come up. It doesn't change our terminal. It doesn't change our operations. It happens entirely on the check-in, and the user is required to reach out and do that. So we're not ever going to become a commercial airport with scheduled service. But those type of aircraft is, I think, heavily driven by athletics. If that's
what is that? I mean, that was my next thought, was that this is a lot of Iowa State related traffic. Can you remind us their level of participation in the airport or assistance with any of that?
Well, the only thing that Iowa State has is a land lease at the airport. They're unique. They have I believe it's back in 1964, they have a non-expiring land lease because we have a relationship with Iowa State, obviously, for a long time. So there isn't financial participation. This is just part of Ames being a public airport. I think one of the reasons we're seeing this type of need is really after 2020, and we had that national, like the global pandemic. We saw, and everyone saw a huge uptick in private charter. So if you know anything, you hear about it on the news, how difficult it is. Well, businesses have started to go to private charter. So all the research park businesses that you know about, I know REG, for example, is a heavy user of charter. There's all these businesses that now it is now cost effective for them to use private charter than it is to go commercial service.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of general aviation airports like Ankeny, like ours, are reaping the benefit of that kind of sea change in aviation use.
And so we don't charge for any private sector company or the Iowa State, but you hope when they come in, they'll buy fuel, we get a percentage of it that helps finance the airport. And I don't know if there's other ancillary type of fees that they would pay that we benefit from.
Well, we expect that, with this improvement, and there'd be essentially no restrictions on larger aircraft coming in, that we talked a little bit earlier this morning, at least on this meeting, is that we would expect this to be somewhat of a catalyst for private hangar growth, which then we'd get significant land lease revenue.
Okay, so just a few more questions. So concisely, what is the basis? What is driving this project? I'm still not hearing it.
Well, what they do, so what we've been essentially, we started on this design. What we've been doing for the last, let's say, 8 months is we've been working on what they call the fleet mix. So they use radar, they use letters of recommendation. We know of people who have wanted to fly in but couldn't fly in under the current infrastructure. So we build this large database of all the aircraft that are coming in and will potentially come in if we improved our runway. And so that fleet mix is what has precipitated this design.
Okay, and that's helpful.
So it's a large study.
I might add too, our existing runway is failing. It's in a deteriorated state, so we need to replace it.
Okay, and so has a pro forma been developed that forecasts both the intended usage, the fuel expenditures, but also there'll be additional maintenance costs. There'll be other facility costs associated with this. Have all those been built into a pro forma?
No.
Well, this design doesn't include, so there's no obligation of increased operational costs. So we will get a strengthened runway that allows larger aircraft to come in. But there isn't, kind of like we were talking about with commercial, the higher operational costs. Those are not any of that. None of that is a requirement as part of this project.
It's not an extension of the surface at all. So the same area we have to clean for snow will be the same area we have to clean.
Okay.
Oh, it doesn't make it bigger.
And then
Just
Thicker.
thicker.
It's just thicker.
And
then-
better surface now, right?
And then I'm already trying to anticipate with larger planes, will there be any impact on our neighborhoods of these larger planes in terms of noise or frequency, anything like that we should be getting out in front of?
Well, so in the master plan, we've already analyzed what they call noise contours. And so none of the regulatory requirement, none of the noise leaves the airport property. So by the time any of the sound that leaves the airport, it's below, at least as far as the FAA's opinion is, a threshold. And the thing is a lot of these aircraft are coming in now. So they're coming in. What I would do, I could probably provide a couple emails if you're interested in what it looks like, but I get a charter that comes in that weighs, let's say, 60,000 pounds. Our rating's 38,000. They need in writing from the manager of the airport an approval to land as an overweight. It's kind of like the DOT has overweight, oversized permits. Well, I just send them in writing. So we're getting that aircraft now. So I would expect from the public's perspective, you would see almost no noticeable noise, sound, all these other things.
And that's super helpful. I am still interested, as you think through our future CIPs, I just can't help but imagine if we're building a larger structure, this is just intuitive to me, that there'll be additional maintenance costs at some point. I just want to make sure that someone's penciling out a pro forma that rolls those things in. I'm supportive of this. I'm supportive of our airport, but we have to kick the tires on this up here. And I just want to make sure that someone is penciling out a pro forma because this doesn't have that.
Yeah, I think what I'd add to that is with the new runway being thicker, it's the same area that we're taking care of. Actually, our maintenance costs will go down to begin with because we're no longer out there maintaining, patching it, crack sealing it, doing all the things we have to do right now on that runway. The only thing it's going to be different, it's just going to be thicker. So rather than being 11 inches thick right now, it's going to be, I think, close to 24 by the time it's all done with all the base and everything beneath it. So that's the main change right now that we would see. So I don't think we're going to see any additional costs, but it's something that we'll definitely look at as we do our operational analysis every year during budget time.
But in fairness, I completely agree with you. I'm not concerned about the near-term maintenance. It's the future maintenance. So this is the difference between maintaining the interstate and maintaining a residential road. It's just going to be a bigger price tag when that bigger piece of concrete needs to be maintained. I just want to make sure someone's thinking about that. I don't mean to beat this horse tonight.
Yeah, we absolutely evaluate that every year during budget time, and we would definitely take that long-term view and look at things in there.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any closing? Any questions? All right. Thanks for the update.
Great, thank you.
All right, move on to item number 41, hearing on property rezoning on East 13th Street. Council, anyone have any questions for Kelly on this particular item tonight?
No.
Any questions for staff? We're going to try and pick the place up here.
For 41?
For item 41.
This is the right 41.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, declare the public hearing on the property rezoning for 3299, 3312, 3699 East 13th and 1699 570th Avenue from planned regional commercial to Northeast Gateway overlay to be open. Anyone want to address council on this topic? Seeing none, declare public hearing to be closed. Entertain motion on first reading ordinance.
Move on first.
Second.
Roll call.
Corriere.
Aye.
Rollins. Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Entertain motion on resolution rescinding the master plan.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Rollins. Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Corriere.
Aye.
All right. 42, hearing on final amendment to fiscal year 2025-2026 budget. Any questions for staff?
Finance Director Corey Goodnow and Budget Manager Nancy Mostella approach the staff table.
Declare public hearing on the final amendment to fiscal year 25-26 budget to be open. Is there anyone from staff, from the audience that wishes to address council? Hearing none, declare public hearing to be closed. Entertain motion on resolution approving amendment to current budget for fiscal year ending June 30, 2026.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Corriere.
Aye.
Rollins.
All right, item number 43, general obligation solid waste disposal loan agreement. Do you want to hit
Let me hit some high notes. This is
high points?
An innovative strategy that.
Yes. So this is the public hearing for a general obligation bond issuance. I think that's different here is we're going to use bond anticipation notes, which is something we haven't done before. It's basically a construction loan throughout the duration of the project. At the conclusion, we would issue general obligation bonds or find an alternate financing method to accomplish a long-term issuance. So the benefit for this is one is it pushes out the debt service a couple years, which is beneficial, and then also allows us to kind of evaluate the operational efficiencies of the operation and make sure that the debt can be funded by the revenues received from customers.
Helps us build a balance, right? Initial balance too.
Yeah. We would otherwise incur, our first payment would be next fiscal year for the debt service. So this will be the subsequent year, so 28 or even 29, depending on how the project goes.
Any questions for Corey?
So are there any downsides to this?
Yeah, the only downside is that when we push out a bond issuance like that, we have interest rate risk. So theoretically, we don't know the interest rates are going to be in 2 years, 18 months, whatever it is. And so I think we believe interest rates will be somewhat comparable, but if there was a spike in interest rates, that would certainly increase the long-term borrowing obligations.
So who did you send this out to? Who would participate in this?
Yep. So we sent this to all of our local lending institutions. So everybody that has a branch in our corporate limits received either an invitation to bid or a request for them to provide a contact so that we could get in touch. So those are due back on the 9th.
And so have you run some numbers? Because these are big numbers.
Yep.
24 million. So have you run the analysis of what that would mean for our budget? Services?
Yeah, so what we did was we included this funding method in the study of the HDR and we prepared in terms of the financial model. So this was what was presented when we worked with HDR and we talked about what the debt service would be and what the tipping fees would need to increase to cover that. So I think we had a roughly $10 tipping fee increase in each of the next 2 years to cover this amount of debt service. Does that answer your question?
Not really.
Okay.
So if you, and I don't mean to like doomsday
No, you're
interest
fine.
rates, but a reasonable range of interest rates based on history. I was trying to understand what this does for the pro forma.
Yeah, so we were pretty conservative when we prepared the performance. So we used about a 5% interest rate. That seems to be a little high compared to what we would see in the market, given that we're in the, we'll say mid threes, 3 3/4. So I think we were pretty conservative in our financial forecasts, and we feel pretty good about. I think our financial advisor feels pretty good about where the market's headed. So I think we're conservative in what we prepared, but there is a risk in terms of interest rates. If we were to take it out to market now, we'd probably take it out with our next issuance, in September. Things could happen then too. I mean, fuel prices change, interest rates prices change, but we think if we didn't do this, we would have to significantly increase rates to our customers immediately.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
All right, declare public hearing on this item to be open. Is there anyone who wants to address council on this item tonight? Seeing none, declare public hearing to be closed. Entertain motion on one of the alternatives. Is there a motion on alternative
Yeah,
one?
move alternative one.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Garten.
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Corriere.
Aye.
Rollins. Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, move on to item 44. Any questions for staff on the water system improvement program on Bar Drive, Douglas Avenue, 16th Street to O'Neill Drive and 17th Street? All right, declare public hearing on this project to be open. Is anyone wants to address council on this topic? Seeing and hearing none, declare public hearing to be closed. Entertain motion accepting report of bids.
So moved. Second.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Motion carried. Entertain motion and resolution approving final plans, specifications, awarding contract to Iowa Water and Waste Systems of Boone, Iowa, in the amount of $881,271.90.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Junk.
Aye.
Corriere.
Aye.
Rollins. Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Move on to item 45, hearing on approval of a purchase agreement for sale of 6 single-family market rate lots, Baker subdivision. Any questions for staff on this one? Declare public hearing on the approval of the purchase agreement for the 6 single-family market rate lots in Baker subdivision to be open. Is there anyone who wants to address council on this topic? Seeing and hearing none, declare public hearing to be closed. Entertain motion on resolution.
Move approval. Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Corriere.
Aye.
Rollins. Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Okay, move on to item 47, hearing on proposition of entering into a Prairieview Industrial Substation line tap construction agreement and transmission joint facility. And it's my understanding that we want to continue the motion, our motion to continue, but if someone wants it, Don, you want to introduce your did your guest want to make any comments or not? He's been here for 3 hours and 25 minutes, so.
Troy is from ITC. We were just here to answer if there's any questions, but
You're welcome to.
that it's going to be extended, so.
Okay, all right. We'll probably see you again. Entertain a motion to continue the public, declare public hearing to be open, and entertain a motion to continue public hearing to June 9th, 2026.
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. And move on to item number 48. Entertain motion on third reading and adoption of ordinance number 4595, amending chapter 28 of the Municipal Code, section 28201 to increase water rates by 3.5% and section 28304 to increase sanitary sewer rates by 5.5%.
Move on third.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Rollins. Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Poirieri.
Aye.
All right, move on to disposition of communications to council. We have 7 items. First is a request for formal adoption of the city's pollinator plan from Lisa Coyle. Just a little background. Amber and I were at the Council Connect event at 60 Forward, and Lisa was there, and we have actually on our website a pollinator plan, but it's never been formally adopted. We explained to her that formal adoption may carry with it financial responsibilities or staff time. So is there an interest on getting a memo on this?
I would move for a memo on this.
Is there a second?
Second.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Next is residential development on Ontario Street. That's just for council's information, objecting to it.
Great.
Next one from Mark, annual appropriation clauses, TIF agreements. Do you have any comment on that, Steve, or not?
No, thanks for information. Mark's responding to a request, and he's given a very definitive answer for you. Something we've done.
Okay. Next is from
Everybody does, actually.
Kathy Kisling, pro speed bumps in Northwestern Avenue. Any interest on, besides thanking her for her feedback?
I would move that we reach out and thank her for her feedback.
Second.
Okay. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. Next is from Erica. Erigu. I'm sorry if I mispronounced it. Regarding the 2026 Ames Story County Juneteenth celebration. May I suggest that we just ask the city manager to, how would you phrase it?
Take care of this.
Take care of it.
I would move that we ask the city manager to see this done.
All right.
Second.
Sponsorship.
Those in favor say aye.
Make it so.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next is from Kathy Ridnow. Ada Hayden rules.
What did she need to?
Anita abstain.
Anita maybe wanted to.
Oh, I'm sorry, Anita.
She abstained.
I'm sorry, you're.
Abstained for 5.
Okay. Sorry, the volume was not very high. So, all right. Let the record show that she abstained. It would seem this be appropriate just to refer to Parks and Rec Commission.
Which
Right.
one is this? I'm sorry.
This is number 6 on the Ada Hayden rules for the new pavement for the speed and the.
Sure.
I will say that the internet sort of had a moment where it blew up over this subject. So there's a lot of strong feelings that we don't have this dialed in correctly. So I've tried to communicate that it's new for us and people need to give these things a chance to work. But I trust that Keith and his staff are constantly evaluating these things. So, but I would move that we refer this to staff.
No memo, just refer to staff.
Just share the feedback.
Yeah.
Share the feedback. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, not the Parks and Rec Commission, just the staff.
I would share it too. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Share it. Just share it.
Mm-hmm.
With staff and Parks and Recreation.
That's my motion.
I'll second.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. And the last is an email from climate action team regarding the solar farm, which was taken up earlier tonight. All right. Reports from governing bodies, anything from Discover Ames?
Yes, we had a meeting last week. There's a lot of positive things going on. People are coming to Ames, staying in our hotels. We've had a number of major events. The Special Olympics was a tremendous success. Many visitors to the community. And so there will be an audit report being conducted and will be presented next month. So those are always important. That's all I have tonight.
Thank you. Ames Regional Economic Alliance. Your report.
I don't think we've met since last time.
Okay. Story County Emergency Management has not met since our last meeting. Transit.
Nothing to report.
Thank you. Council comments. Trey, you're what, 2 meetings into it now?
Yeah. I'm just having a good time, I guess. I'll try to make it up for all the meetings I can, but yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for being here. Any comments tonight?
No comments.
All right. Thank you. Tim?
Wanted to give a special thank you to the scouts that came and put up flags and took them down for Memorial Day. It was a huge act of love, and appreciate the scouts. That's all I have tonight.
Thank you.
Nothing for me tonight. Thanks.
Nothing for me.
Nothing tonight.
Anita, anything from you? Mr. Shanker, do you have something?
Yeah, I like to participate in this for the first time in my career, so thank you. It's council comments.
Council comments.
I know, but I'm, as a council commenting.
We're going to say
City manager's comments.
Okay.
The most asked question is, when is the splash pad out west going to be completed?
Oh, hey.
Luckily, Keith was awake and he was watching, and he reported that we're waiting for the state.
Thanks, Keith.
To approve our design plans. If that happens in an expeditious way, they hope that it could take 2 months to build. So he's right now projecting it would be open in July. But remember, it could rain. There could be delays in getting materials. But right now, if the state gets us passes on our plans, it could open as early as July. Current estimate.
Okay.
Okay. With that, entertain motion to adjourn.
Move we adjourn.
Second.
Those in there say aye.
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Ames City Council meeting credits.